Okay, the Housing, Urban Development and Zoning Committee for today, June 24th, will be called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman,
Present.
thank you. Alderman Cone. Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Martin.
This was pre-alarming for us.
Alderman Narayan.
Present.
Alderwoman Evans. Chairman Boyd.
Present.
President Reed.
And just with it, with the
Here.
virtual event, it did not.
At present, you have one.
STLTV, can you give me co-hosting capability so I can mute people, please? Alderwoman Boyd, can you mute yourself? Okay. We will move to approval of the minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes dated June 22nd, 2021.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 24th, second by the Alderman from the 19th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans. Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask if we can come back to Alderman Muhammad, if he could give us a thumbs up on his vote. I understand he's having audio difficulties, but if he can at least give us a thumbs up, a thumb down on his vote.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Coder. Alderman Muhammad. Thank you. Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Evans. 6 aye votes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, up for review today is Board Bill number 2, sponsored by President Lewis Reed. President Reed, you're up.
Right. First, I want to thank everybody for attending, and all the residents and some of the nonprofits and folks who are attending to hear the presentation tonight. And thanks in advance to the mayor's office, who's going to officially present their line items to the Board of Aldermen tonight. You know, we have an opportunity for some major change in our city and to address some systemic issues that we've had to endure for many, many years. But it's gonna really hinge on how we come together and how we set our spending priorities moving forward and put this money to work in areas across our city where it is sorely needed. This truly could be a game changer for the city of St. Louis. So I appreciate all of the input that we've received already online, and people who've called me, people who've emailed me, texted me, inboxed me on all my social media accounts and everything. And I want to let everybody know we're collecting all that information, and we're going to be reviewing it and using that to set priorities moving forward. Right. The first round of spending that we put in place prior to Mayor Cruson leaving, we were able to do that fairly quickly. We were able to do that with very little hiccups and everything. Everybody worked together to get that done. It's going to take that same type of cooperation to get this one done. It's going to take that same type of cooperation and working together and reaching across, you know, lines and you know, partnering with people and letting the good ideas be the things that we center around, setting all personalities and everything else aside. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Some people, you know, also I think it's really important to clear up some things. The Board of Aldermen, we have a legislative process we must follow, just like the U.S. Congress and the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, the State House, State Senate. The Board of Aldermen, we also have a process that we have to follow. we by law have to have board bills read out loud on the floor 3 different times, 3 different days. We also must have public hearings, which is what we're having right now. We received the mayor's list of items I believe it was like last Wednesday. There's been what I would call a just unreasonable and outrageous demands from some people in the community that really don't understand the process that says, okay, you received those last Wednesday. Why doesn't the board just adopt those today? You can't pass laws like that. We have to have public hearings. After we have public hearings, we will decide what goes out to the full floor of the Board of Aldermen. And once it goes to the full floor of the Board of Aldermen, we have laws that we have to pass. We have a charter that guides what happens on the floor of the Board of Aldermen through its passage. People who are seeking to just divide and distract by assuming or putting messages out like we can automatically do this stuff today is not helping the cause at all. So I'm asking everybody to reach out to your friends and tell them to get involved in this process. It's so important that people get involved, but do it from a spirit of working together, do it from a spirit of helping to bring relief to people throughout the city of St. Louis, that if we miss this opportunity, it'll be a lifetime before we get another opportunity like this to transform the lives of the people of the city of St. Louis. Mr. Chairman, I believe we have the mayor's office with us tonight to give their presentation about some of their spending power, some of their ideas.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have, on behalf of the mayor's office, Noel Pfeffer, who will introduce his team and make the presentation. And after his presentation, the committee will ask questions if necessary, and then we will move into public comment. One of the ground rules I would like to set is, number one, that we always be respectful of one another, period. I'm not going to tolerate any hostility, from committee members to speakers or speakers to committee members. So I just want to set those ground rules in the beginning. And STL TV, I'm asking for co-host credentials. And if somebody can provide those, I'd greatly appreciate it. So I'm going to now turn it over to Noel Pfeffer from the mayor's office, who will introduce himself, what he does for the mayor's office, and further introduce his speakers on behalf of the mayor's office. So, Mr. Pfeffer, it's all yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman Boyd, for that introduction. My name is Noel Pfeffer. I'm the Mayor's Director of Policy and Development. I'll be passing it off to Jared, who will be leading our presentation, and I'm also going to share my screen at this point.
Okay.
Good evening, distinguished members of the committee and the public. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to talk about this important historic process and time. My name is Jared Boyd. I have the pleasure of serving as Chief of Staff to Mayor Tashara Jones. With me this evening, we have Noel Pfeffer, Director of Development and Policy in the Mayor's Office, and Wally Stewart, who is one of the co-chairs of the Stimulus Advisory Board. I'm going to speak very briefly about the moment that we find ourselves in the urgency that undergirds this relief package. Wally Stewart is going to talk briefly about the Stimulus Advisory Board process, and Noel will talk about the stimulus advisory recommendations and the mayor's ultimate recommendations that found their way into this package. So with respect to direct relief, which this package covers, it is guided by the fact that the COVID-19 crisis is not over, in St. Louis. St. Louis has a vaccination rate for completion around 32%. There are certain zip codes like 63120 and 63115 that have COVID vaccination rates of about 20% today. As the Delta variant is already in Missouri and in places that will unfortunately find their ways to St. Louis very soon, if not, if they're not here already. Since May, 80% of new COVID diagnoses in the city are in the Black community. That is double what it was in January of this year. In addition to COVID, we are seeing an eviction crisis that we're on the precipice of. Today, we are glad to see that the CDC and the federal government extended the eviction moratorium for another month, but that should not give us a great deal of comfort because we know that there are still 2,800 eviction proceedings that will most likely go forward, and then there will be thousands of other cases that will most likely be filed once the moratorium is lifted. And last but certainly not least, COVID-19 and its impact have severely disrupted communities across the country, driving a surge in violence and other disruptions. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Wally Stewart to talk a little bit about the direct relief framework and process that went into this proposal. Wally, are you with us?
I am. Thank you very much, Jared. Appreciate it. Greetings and thank you to the committee members for this opportunity to speak. I'm Dr. Wally Stewart. I'm a professor of public ethics and political values by training. I'm also an enthusiastic St. Louis community member who sees our city's potential as being even bigger than its problems, which means our potential is pretty big. I've had the honor of being named co-chair of the Mayor's Stimulus Advisory Board by the mayor, along with Sandra Moore, who couldn't be here tonight. I want to take this opportunity to talk about how the mayor's spending plan was shaped by the Stimulus Advisory Board. The timeline you see on the screen gives you some sense of the work that has led to this point. We had an initial organizing meeting in April, and our inaugural public meeting for the SAB's work was held on May 1st. To effectively and quickly ramp up this work, we first established separate working groups, and these have established subcommittees to work on specific pieces of the puzzle. The Process and Planning Committee oversaw the coordination of the work within the SAB, i.e. the creation of the working groups, the strategy for this collaborative effort, and ensuring the public had easy access to the work being done. It also oversaw a substantive, if very time compressed, community input strategy for this urgently needed first round of direct relief spending. The Data and Evaluation Working Group designed and analyzed a public survey with thousands of responses in both data and narrative form. In order to get the most accurate picture of need in our most vulnerable communities, they also mined data on existing measures of need from a number of community sources. More about that in a moment. They turned all of this work around in amazing time in order to ensure that this crucially important first wave of spending went where it was needed most. Finally, the Direct Relief Working Group gathered and synthesized all of this data into a coherent, openly reasoned, and comprehensive set of direct relief recommendations. The Stimulus Board then invited community members to comment on these priorities over the course of several hours of public testimony at a meeting on Saturday, June 3rd. This public testimony shaped the final recommendations forwarded to the mayor on June 12th, and on June 15th, the mayor announced her direct relief framework based on all of these efforts. Over the course of approximately 6 weeks, this mountain of work was done by a group of highly respected community leader volunteers who have devoted many of their personal time hours to ensure that our residents' voices are heard in the spending process. The goal from the beginning has been to help St. Louisans, especially our youth, recover their health, their safety, their homes, their education, and their jobs in these trying times. So at this moment, I want to take a moment to dig a little deeper into the data gathered during this community engagement process. On this slide, you can see the data that came back, or the responses that were received to the survey that was sent out and was open for about a week and a half. Over 2,000 St. Louis City residents responded to this survey. We can go ahead, I think, and move to the next slide. What we asked the respondents to do was to prioritize among several large buckets of need, to give us a sense of which of these things are the top priority for them. And as you can see here, meeting critical health needs was prioritized at the top, rental, mortgage, and utility assistance next, support for the unhoused was third, then support for small and distressed businesses, summer youth programming, expanding internet access, free public transportation, and targeted direct cash assistance. Because ours included a group of hardcore statisticians, you have both the median and the mean here. For those not versed in the statistics, the mean is the average as we know it. It's probably the most informative piece of the puzzle here. So those are the best numbers to go by. The median is a slightly different measure that simply takes the central data point among a widely disparate set of data points. But this really gives us a sense of what priorities the community sees moving forward. Go ahead and advance to the next slide. In addition to all of this community engagement in the survey, both in terms of the data you just saw and in terms of thousands of narrative responses, the Stimulus Advisory Board knew that there were other measures of community need that were out there for us to mine. Those included going to United Way's 211 system and picking out all of the aid requests and coding them based on the categories. So this isn't just a measure of what people think is most important. This is direct data about who in the community called and what it is that they needed. And as you see, by far the biggest calls were for rental, mortgage, and utility assistance, and the next set for wraparound support for the unhoused. In addition, the mutual aid network has done an amazing amount of work in building creating a mutual aid support, and their data was mined in order to understand to make sure that the data we were getting from 211 was verified by other sources of data in terms of community need. And you can see here that it was, because again, those top priorities were the ones that the mutual aid network saw. And then of course, we pulled in data from the CARES Act requests, and the rental, mortgage, and utility assistance, definitely a top priority there. So that gives you a sense of a little bit of the depth of the data and the breadth of the data and who answered these questions. Now, of course, as a group of St. Louis resident volunteers, our role is only advisory. The people of St. Louis have vested in you, the Board of Aldermen, the mayor, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, the obligation and authority to make the final decision as to how this urgently needed aid is spent. I say this not to shirk responsibility. We stand ready to stand behind the spending plan that we helped shape. Instead, I say this to assure the residents of this city that we hope all processes and procedures are followed, and that the folks they elected to represent them will make the final decision on how this money is spent. On behalf of the Stimulus Advisory Board, I want to thank the HUD's committee for the opportunity to speak today, and I want to thank the mayor for the opportunity from all of us to contribute to the future of this city. Finally, I want to especially thank all of the St. Louis residents who took their precious time and energy in the middle of this crisis we're facing to engage this process. I want to assure them that they have been heard, and I want to ask everyone here today to respect their input by taking it into account in their deliberations. Thank you again for your time and attention. I'll hand it back to Noel. Or to
Thank
Jerry.
you, Wally, and I'll just echo your gratitude. It's an honor to be here before the HUD's committee, and it's especially an honor to discuss the recommendations that grew out of such a community and data-driven process, and appreciate the thousands of folks who engaged. I'm going to start by speaking about the principles that drove this direct relief package before digging into some of our concrete proposals. And the biggest principle actually is the fact that we chose to focus on direct relief. Unlike the current version of Board Bill 2, the Cruising Framework, which aims to allocate the full $500 million and was designed to address both direct relief and infrastructure, we felt that we needed a two-track process, or perhaps a multi-track process, focusing on direct relief first. Because infrastructure, we need a deeper analysis of the city's capital priorities. And also we know that there are other funds coming down the pipeline. So the first principle was just this focus on direct relief, and specifically a focus on populations underserved by previous or current relief programs. And along these same lines, a focus on the urgent need and on funds that needed to be spent immediately. Along these same lines, we prioritized programs that address multiple needs. And we also wanted to strike a balance between focusing on existing programs with current capacity and folks who are ready to implement immediately, while also investing in certain pilot activities that have the potential to generate returns down the line. And then finally, and of course, and as you have heard, we really prioritize community input and data-driven processes. And now I'm going to dig into a little bit more concretely what we're talking about doing with this money. And my humble ask is to the HUD's committee is that you build on this process and these proposals and not replicate it. We're excited to hear your input. No one is claiming that this is complete or comprehensive, but we have put work into this and it's a start. So with that, our first priority, given the fact that less than 40% of St. Louisans are fully vaccinated, and there is a Delta strain heading our way, was establishing a mass local vaccination program. And the vision here is really to set up pop-up vaccination sites across the city by buying mobile vaccination clinics, which post-pandemic can be turned into mobile medical clinics, delivering a wide variety of medical services. But it's not enough to set up these pop-up sites. We also needed to invest in canvassing and community outreach so that the day before each pop-up, we knock the doors of the half mile around the site or the blocks around the site so that everyone's aware. And what the goal here is fundamentally just to lower that barrier to getting your vaccine, because there's a lot of folks who are open to getting a vaccine, but it requires taking time out of their day. They have multiple jobs. We just wanted to bring that barrier down and bring the vaccine to them. A key piece of this as well is vaccine education and marketing, and really investing in a campaign to assuage the reasonable fears of communities that have been disinvested in and marginalized. And then finally, it was really important to us to invest in the city's long-term capacity by creating a community health workers program in the Department of Health. And these are individuals, it includes 8 community health workers, as well as a data analyst and a grants manager and a nurse that can, the community health workers may also be nurses, I should have mentioned that. But create this capacity in the health department that can conduct contact tracing while we have a pandemic, but that can also do things like lead and mold remediation and educational programming when we return to normal times. And you may see that some things missing from this list, like PPE, and that's because we know that we can get FEMA reimbursements for that. And in fact, the city has currently quite a surplus of PPE equipment. And with that, I'll turn, that response to the public health crisis. Now I'll speak to the housing crisis. And right off the bat, you'll see an order of magnitude difference in the amount of money that we're allocating here. And the simple reason for that is that we're not the only players in the health space. There's a whole lot of actors, state, federal, and private, working to get people vaccinated. The housing safety net is really falling on us, a disproportionate amount. And so what we're trying to do in the context for all these expenditures is efforts we are undertaking in coordination with the courts, with the sheriff's office, to be able to track evictions so that we know when evictions are happening, both when they're coming down the pipeline as well as when they're actually being executed. And that's one of the reasons, for example, that we know today that actually over 3,000 evictions have been filed. And that just little spike over the last few days was driven in part by the fact that landlords saw the moratorium ending or thought that it could end, as we all did, and started pre-filing some of those evictions. But what we want to do is, as soon as we know an eviction's in the pipeline, we want to connect folks to legal and mediation services. So that's the preventive part. But then we also want to put them into a centralized intake as their eviction gets closer and closer so that we can connect them to bridge and rapid rehousing. Bridge housing are things like hotel and motel vouchers, whereas rapid rehousing will help individuals pay for things like their security deposits and first and last months of rent. And then finally, and of course, we have the rental and utility assistance, which are ERAP funds, which will be administered through the St. Louis Housing Authority and YARDI. And the purpose there is to pay, again, prospectively, up to 3 months rent, but create a system that is able to get people, support individuals into an ongoing permanent housing program. And that's why all of this is layered with case management, benefits navigators, and community outreach programs, so that we're helping the people. We're not just putting an application out there and hoping that folks sign up. We're really acting proactively to find these individuals and wrap the city's arms around them. But we do know that there are some people who will fall through the cracks. And that's why we're also investing substantially in emergency shelter, in safe havens, a 24/7 walk-in shelter, in an intentional encampment, to provide a permanent space where individuals who reject being in shelters and who don't feel safe in shelters have a place that they can call home, and where we can find them, and where providers and direct service providers can find them day in and day out and get them that stability that they need to move forward, as well as investing $2 million in expanding tiny homes programs. And then finally, we're also investing, of course, in mortgage and property tax assistance. And I'm going over all of this at a high level, but I'd be happy to answer questions as Jared and Wally will at the end. This is just a map from 211 calls of the United Way of where the calls for rental and utility assistance are coming. And I think it just goes to show that there's a really strong equity lens around our focus on direct relief in general and on housing assistance in particular. In addition to housing relief, we also know that working families in our city need economic relief. And we're trying a variety of different prongs here because we know that there's no single silver bullet. A piece of it, and a really critical piece of it, is setting up a technical assistance hub at SLPC that can help businesses do things, basic things like tax filing and navigating the variety of public benefits. This may look a little low, but the thing to bear in mind is that ARPA includes countless streams for restaurants, for venues, for hospitality industries, and a variety of other businesses to access federal funds. But the purpose of this technical assistance hub will be to help small businesses navigate that federal ecosystem. Additionally, long-term, we want to make legal services, accounting services, human resources services, and more like web design available at this technical assistance hub. And SLPC is looking at locating this hub in North St. Louis, potentially along MLK. This technical assistance hub will also set up a small business grants program, small business and nonprofit grants program, I should say, where they will look to make investments in small businesses which have a little obstacle or hurdle to overcome in order to scale or in order to stay afloat. And so this is not intended to be the urgent direct relief small business grants piece. That's really covered by the federal government, and that's advice we got from the Accelerator for America. But these are intended to really create job growth and economic growth as well. Then there's the targeted cash assistance program. Well, what we're essentially looking at is making a single lump sum payment of roughly $500 to 10,000 individuals and families across the city. And the purpose there is really to ease the transition as so many individuals are coming off of unemployment insurance. There have been some fears about undesirable incentive effects, and that's where that lump sum payment piece really matters. And the fact that we're not only looking at the city's unemployed population, but also the population which just is underemployed or simply underpaid. There's also a variety of other pieces here. There's investments in community-driven food assistance, in senior services, including healthy home repair, as well as ride share and grocery delivery programs. There's early childcare services, as well as investments in workforce development, direct support care workers, as well as public Wi-Fi, learning labs, and digital literacy. I'll mention on that front, the learning labs would be programs across our recreation centers. The digital literacy program would be a collaboration with the St. Louis Public Library. Public Wi-Fi includes efforts immediately that are in the works, but needed a little extra boost in order to be complete on the part of ITSA and parks to light up our recreational centers. And by light up, I mean get high-speed Wi-Fi in them, as well as potential planning efforts, which are in the works along a long-term public Wi-Fi and broadband expansion effort, although that will cost a lot more money, but there's some planning that needs to happen first. And then there's also investments in equitable and accessible transit, in particular for youth and for seniors. And then finally, and of course, there is a response to the public safety crisis. And it was just announced today that St. Louis is one of 15 cities who are part of the White House's Community Violence Intervention Cohort. They really encourage, and the Treasury's interim final rule was designed to encourage cities to invest in community violence intervention programs. And while we do have some great best practices that we've seen work here in St. Louis, such as pure violence, we're really looking forward to engaging in this cohort to learn from other cities as well. Because we know that the arrest and incarcerate model for public safety has failed, and we're looking for alternatives. And there's the old is dying and the new is trying to be born, and we don't know exactly what that alternative will look like, so it's important to experiment and try a lot of different things. And that's what this cohort is going to allow us to do, and what this funding is going to allow us to do, while of course continuing to invest in practices that have worked, such as pure violence. There's also a year-round youth jobs program as well, which is essentially a three-pronged stool of a partnership with the St. Louis Public Schools, Slate, and St. Louis Youth Jobs and the private sector, as well as behavioral health services, which will look to expand and build on the cops and clinicians program by actually going one step forward and going to a civilians and clinicians model where peer specialists can respond to individuals' calls for service, in particular focusing on calls which is just a person with mental health needs who wants to get to the hospital and needs their meds. And there's a lot of those calls that waste a lot of police time today. There's also a youth-led programming prong here, which was a recommendation from the Violence Prevention Commission, as well as basketball leagues, both throughout the day and at night. And then finally, and of course, there are planning and administrative costs, which are wrapped up in all of this. And some of it is laying the groundwork for the next tranche in investment in infrastructure by investing in neighborhood and capital planning, so that we can ensure that the priorities that we fund with the remaining $430 million that we have at our disposal are actually reflecting the community's priorities and needs. There's also an incredible need in city government for investments in data analytics and software, and this would fund the creation of a special data analytics team in the IT department to help coordinate the city's data. Of course, there will be auditing, accounting, and financial services associated with all of this. We know that ARPA funds will be under intense scrutiny from the federal government, and in fact, our first report will be expected on August 31st. So we better get some funds appropriated and moving before then. And then, of course, there will be legal and management services, as well as translation, marketing, and communication services. Because if we set up a bunch of wonderful programs, but no one knows about them or how to plug into them, their impact will be limited. And then finally, on advice of council and many others, we have included a $1.4 million contingency fund, which could be reallocated to various uses depending on need. And with that, we're happy to take any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Noel. I really appreciate that presentation. Certainly there was a lot of thought. I want to congratulate and thank the Stimulus Advisory Committee for all the hard work that they put into this. Again, I believe it was very thoughtful, very considerate of the needs of the city of St. Louis. And I'm excited about this process. Let me get to my list of committee members. So let's go to Alderwoman Marlene Davis for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions at this moment.
Is Alderman Shane Cohn with us this evening?
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Alderman Cohn, it's on you.
Thanks. I'm having some connectivity issues, so my video isn't on at the moment, but thank you for allowing the opportunity to hear the plan from the mayor's office this afternoon.
Continue, Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was getting some feedback there. I don't have any questions. I want to thank the members of the advisory committee and the mayor's office and the various employees and city departments for their hard work putting this together and compiling the feedback from our citizens. So I'll defer to the other committee members for questions, and if I have any that come up, I'll let you know, Mr. Chair.
Sure, thank you. Alderwoman Pam Boyd.
No questions.
Alderman John Collins Muhammad, did we get your audio fixed? Are you there?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Awesome.
I do have some questions. I want to be transparent, blunt, and straight to the point. So my question would be to the Chief of Staff, Mr. Boyd, Mr. Jared Boyd, since we have three boys on the phone right now. On the Stimulus Advisory Committee, a number of people were selected, including a member of the Board of Aldermen. While I respect and admire my colleague from the 15th, how was she chosen to represent the Board of Aldermen? And if that was the case, why was there not a Black Northside Alderman selected for this committee? There was a white Southside Alderman, but not a Black Northside Alderman. And that was questions that I had received from my constituents in the 21st Ward. And I did pose that question to you, Mr. Chief of Staff, in a private email, and I did not get a response back. So now I pose that question publicly. How was she selected? Why was she selected? Does she have some special expertise that I'm not aware of, or that we're not aware of? And again, this is not a slight to my colleague, but it is a little bit perplexing to me that when you look at the health disparities in the city of St. Louis, they exist in North City. And even in the zip codes you just listed, 63118, 63115, which is a zip code that I represent, all of the comments and the feedback came from those two zip codes that are in North St. Louis. However, a North St. Louis alderman was not selected at the same time as a white Southside alderman was. And that's a question that I must ask, because if I don't, I will feel like I'm doing a disservice to my constituents in North City. So that's my question to you, Mr. Chief of Staff.
Sure. Thank you, Alderman Collins, Muhammad, for your question. In transparency, we did select over 20 members, in excess of 30 folks that participated in the Stimulus Advisory Board. But with respect to electeds that were a part of the process, yes, the alderwoman from the 15th was one of the over 30 people that was selected. We did also extend an invitation to the alderwoman from the 26th, who opted to or requested that her position on the Stimulus Advisory Board go to a small African-American woman-owned business owner. We In addition to those folks, President Reed was extended an invitation to participate in the Stimulus Advisory Board as well. And last but not least, the only state representative that was on the board, State Rep Kimberly Ann Collins, I think did a phenomenal job of participating as well. All of that is to say that we think had a thorough process, and it was not a perfect process, but I think we acted in an expeditious fashion, and there are things that maybe we would do slightly different if we could go back. But I think that kind of concentration on one alder person overlooks the diversity and kind of broad kind of skill sets and perspectives that the entire Stimulus Advisory Board brought.
Thank you, Mr. Chief of Staff. And I'm going to be blunt again. You really did not answer my question,
Sure did.
but that's okay. My next question is, I heard $8 million for unhoused shelter. Is that number correct?
Indeed, and that number came from DHS's assessment of the need. In particular, it's driven by the fact that there are emergency shelters that will lose their funding in the coming months should we fail to pass this direct relief package. And emergency shelters totaling 380 beds.
Thank you. Thank you. So with this emergency shelter, is this permanent housing or temporary housing? How will shelters be chosen? Is there an RFP process? Who chooses and who makes those selections?
Yes, as was detailed in the direct relief package by category document that was sent over to the HUD's committee last week, the vast majority of these funds will be allocated by RFP or intergovernmental agreement, and the emergency shelters is one of those. Although there will be certain contracts with current providers that will be extended in order to ensure continuity. But the $8 million figure includes both those contract extensions as well as potential expansion and additional emergency shelters that would be selected by RFP.
Absolutely. And I did read that in the notations that you sent over, but for the sake of transparency and for public knowledge, I wanted to make sure that that was stated. Okay, so back to the permanent and short-term housing for the homeless. So with the $8 million with the $8 million that's currently been allocated, I heard you say contract extensions. Can you list the current standing contracts that the city of St. Louis has now with emergency shelter?
Yes, if you move on to another question and give me 1 or 2 minutes to pull that up in my email, I'm happy to pull up that information for you.
Hey, thank you. So while he's doing that, Mr. Chief of Staff, I'll go back to you if you don't mind. With all of the data that was processed by this Stimulus Advisory Council, where is that data? How's that data shared with the Board of Aldermen, or specifically how's it shared with the Committee on Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning? Can we get that data that was processed through the advisory committee? And can you lay out and kind of go over how this data was processed through the committee?
Sure, and I'll let Noel delve into some of the kind of data items that go into that analysis. But I would start by saying a lot of this information is on the Stimulus Advisory Board website. That's a part of the city website. But we will most certainly make sure that the HUD's committee has all of that information. I will say that we were very aggressive in doing outreach to obtain this data, not just relying upon the web or social media. After our initial round of data gathering, we did targeted canvassing in certain St. Louis neighborhoods. We also went to senior centers and went, I think, above and beyond, like I said, just relying on a website to reach people really where they were. So also handed out flyers with a phone number so that the less tech savvy were able to have their voice heard. But to address, like I said, your original question, we will most certainly get you this data that is already largely housed on our stimulus advisory webpage.
There is a 16-page data analysis available on the city website, and then which we will send over. And then additionally, I'll just list off the shelters which are currently receiving funds from the Emergency Solutions Grant, which will begin expiring in October. And that's St. Patrick's Center, Covenant House, City Hope, Magdala Foundation, Gateway 180, Our Lady's Inn, Peter and Paul, St. Martha's Hall, Women's Safe House, and City of St. Louis Extreme Weather.
Okay, thank you. So back to the data processing. So I heard you mention the very short document that is listed on the city's website under the mayor's office page online. And as you just acknowledged, that was an analysis. Is there a full detailed plan and summary that we can get that the advisory committee worked off on? Can we get all of the data and all the information? Can that be shared with the committee? That's what I'm asking. Every single piece of data that was given to the advisory committee, can it be shared with the legislative body? And if so, when can it?
If I may speak on behalf of the Stimulus Advisory Board, given the importance that we gave to the community input, we are very happy to share everything from vast sheets of raw data to every level of analysis in between, if you would like it. You asked for a summary. I think that's that 16-page sheet, but we are eager to have you engage with this data and the community input, and we'll be happy to share any and all of it.
Thank you, Wally. And I didn't know if Noel or Jared was going to say anything. You kind of jumped in, so I just wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to respond to if they had a comment. But thank you, and I appreciate that. And
this isn't our data, actually. I often reach out to Wally asking for data because that Stimulus Advisory Board collected it.
Okay, did you have anything, Jared? I'm sorry,
no,
Mr. Chief.
I think both navigating the website and us resending that data to you and providing you with all of that work is something that we're more than willing to do.
Absolutely, thank you. And I have one more question. First, before I go on, let me apologize to you both. I just called you Jared and I just called you Noel. Noel, you're gonna have to excuse me. All last name wrong. So I'm just gonna say Mr. F and Mr. Chief of Staff. So I'm going to stick with the data processing with it. Was there a particular company or consultant that was used to process the data? Or was this all just the committee looking at documents, written comments, and just public comments taken online?
No, there was no contractor or no consultant. It was the Data and Evaluation Subcommittee of the Stimulus Advisory Board, and I believe Wally could speak further on that.
It was them, and they are particularly on that subcommittee because they have high expertise. That committee included folks like Christina Garmendia, who was the author of the Equity Indicators report and has an incredible amount of expertise crunching this kind of data down and making sure that both everything is included and that it's presented in a digestible form.
Other members, just in the interest of full transparency, included Chris Pranger, Paul Sorensen, Dr. Jason Purnell, David White, and Ed Bryant. I hope I'm not missing anyone.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, for the sake of time, I will not ask any more questions for right now, but I may have a few more as this hearing goes on. I will yield back for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chief of Staff and Mr. Elhoff.
Sure. Has Sarah Martin had a chance to join us? I know she texted me and said she was trying to get in, but having some difficulties. Alderwoman Martin. Okay, we'll move on to Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. I know that you have a hard stop here at about 9 or so, and I know that I can follow up with any questions I have tomorrow or the next day. So I'd like to reserve my time for the public to ask their questions.
Well, I want to indulge you, Alderman, to at least ask one question. I mean, and it may not be a hard stop. I mean, but I did want to be able to set a time limit, but I do want to also be respectful to the people who have signed up. If there's only 2 or 3 people to go at 9 o'clock, I will extend that time. But it's very important to me that committee members ask the questions publicly with all transparency so that we have a really good process. So I'd appreciate it if you do have some questions to go ahead and ask.
Sure. So I did notice that part of the in part of the PowerPoint presentation, there was about $5 million set aside to wraparound services and tiny house projects. I was just at a tiny house project for veterans over, I think, 1515 North Grand. Are we going to be doing similar projects to that? Would this be for the general public? Do we have locations in mind for any of that?
So those funds are allocated to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to administer those $2 million. And our anticipation is that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund will release a NOFA or an RFP, essentially inviting developers of tiny home projects to apply. And so there'll be a competitive process, and tiny home developments, including the Veterans Community Project, are welcome to apply.
I think that that'd be great. I know, winter comes every year, and every year it seems like we're caught off guard. So the more that we can do to keep roofs over people's heads, I'm for it. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, man, you're too easy. Okay, Alderwoman Evans, is she with us?
Yes, I am, and I'm sorry for getting here this late. So
That's okay.
I
You're on
don't have
time.
any questions at this time until I know what I'm questioning. Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
All righty. Before I ask questions, I'm gonna go back to Alderman Cone, who said he was having technical difficulties. Alderman Cone, are you ready to ask questions at this time?
I don't have any at the moment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna do the Jeffrey Boyd. Love the presentation, a lot of great information. So here come the questions. Can the data be drilled down from the survey specifically by neighborhood comments? And I guess I would ask that to Mr. Stewart, if that's okay.
Seward, but that's okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Happens
I
all the
have
time.
glasses on. I got the
No
little
worries.
iPad. I will not make that mistake. Seward, I got you.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It happens all the time. So I have to think back to the precisely. We can definitely drill down by zip code. Let me email somebody on the data team that I know can answer that question and get that answer for you.
Well, actually not by zip code, because we have some people that live in 63112 and their homes are valued at $350,000. And I live in 63112 and my house was valued at $30,000. So
I understand that zip code is not a sufficient measure.
No,
I just am not sure I don't want to off the top of my head tell you something that's wrong.
Yeah.
So I will get that answer for you.
No, I appreciate that, because that's critical data. I think sometimes when we analyze, by zip code and those who are into statistics, it's so easy to manipulate the statistics to prove your point when it's really not that violent, right? So I would be interested to know exactly, what neighborhoods, and if you really want to know the truth about it, I'd be interested to know what census tract it came from, because that's very important. So that's a question that I have. And I know it's going to sound like, I listened to Alderman Muhammad, and I don't want his questionings to be taken the wrong way about the makeup of the Stimulus Advisory Committee, because the list of names that I saw were totally professional. Most of them I recognize personally that do good work in the community. But I know what's important to me when we're doing the work like this is that we're actually talking to people who are directly impacted by a situation. And so my question is, how many people, and this is probably going to either Mr. Boyd or Mr. Pfeffer, how many people of the 30 people that served on the Stimulus Advisory Committee were actually people who were directly impacted in some kind of way based on the categories of the survey that were given?
None.
If that makes sense.
Can you expound upon that a little bit?
Okay, so for example, if you want to talk about, there's a great need for people who are drug dependent or, substance abuse dependent. Were there anybody on the Stimulus Advisory Committee that fit that profile? Now, I just made that up. I didn't see you guys, go hard on that particular subject matter, but I'm just asking, of all the subject matter experts that served on that committee, how many people were actually homeless that served on that committee? How many people were suffering from, robbing Peter to pay Paul with their rent and so on and so forth? How many people were poor people? Let me say it that way. How many people served on your advisory committee that were poor people? Or people that were low income? Because I don't want to be disparaging, because I have a hard time being politically correct because I'm so blunt. So how many people were of a low income based on, the federal guidelines served on that committee?
I don't know how many people I would determine to be poor, but what I would say is that a lot of the community members and subject matter experts have dedicated their careers to serving those type of people.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that Dr. Eccles and Valerie Russell and some of the other department heads that have heavily shaped this proposal have dedicated their lives to serving the people that are impacted the most by COVID-19. So while I can't say that there were a lot of quote unquote incredibly poor people, I think that served on the Stimulus Advisory Board. I think the direct relief questionnaire, the analysis of the 211 data, the analysis of the mutual aid data really centered the needs of the people that are hurting the most.
And Jared, and I think it's okay for me to call you Jared, right? Because I can call you Mr. Boyd, but here's what I hear. Problems are best solved by people who are basically at the root of the problem. And so if that's the narrative that you want to create and you want to expound on, then you must demonstrate that you truly support that. And so when you have people that are serving by you, and 30 people is a lot of people on an advisory committee, certainly there would have been room for 5 people that may have been subjected to some of those social problems. Would you agree?
If I may jump in here, Chairman Boyd, this was a good faith effort to center those impacted voices. I don't know the full family history and background of every member of the SAB and whether they do or do not have lived experience. I won't speak for them. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that many do have lived experiences of poverty and trauma and eviction and drug use. But it was a good faith effort and it wasn't perfect. But our next effort, we're determined to be even more inclusive and community driven. And that's why when we looked to allocate infrastructure funds and we look to figure out the community's priorities for the over $400 million in remaining stimulus funds, we're actually going to ask each alderman to submit 2 nominees to a citizens advisory committee. And that way you all will enter the process and you can judge for yourselves who you think is that best representative to be the community's voice. Now, that process is going to take a long time. And that's why we decided to move more expeditiously with direct relief. But with the remaining over $400 million, we're going to work each time to get that process better and to reach that same principle and ideal and standard that you set of centering the impacted voices.
Okay, now, again, I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but I'm just trying to make sure that I have the right information, because I've had, you know, bar talk and coffee talk with people that want to understand, you know, the transparency of the process and who's who, because certainly most people in my neighborhood probably wouldn't have a clue who 90% of the names of the people who served on the Stimulus Advisory Committee are. And so I just bring that up for conversation. It's not, again, it's not to be disparaging in any way, because like President Reed said, this is it's a lifetime opportunity, and we can't come out of the box being perfect. Certainly. And so I'm not, you know, trying to beat you on the head or anything like that. But I do want to point out things that may help us do better. So, you know, so that's some of the reason of my questioning. Let's talk a little bit about targeted direct cash assistance. I'm not sure I truly understand. I think I heard you say people who were cut off unemployment benefits can receive some type of service. But what does that really look like? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a really tricky program to get right. And we welcome your input, because we're currently working with partners at the national level to gather best practices from cities across the country who've done targeted direct cash assistance. And in fact, we have an MOU with Ignite Cities, who has helped cities like Los Angeles, Birmingham, Columbia, South Carolina, and others deliver targeted direct relief. And so the core of the program, though, is the eligibility criteria. And that's what we're currently trying to figure out. Who gets this money? Because the logistics are actually pretty straightforward. There are $500 lump sum payments to about 10,000 people. And these can be put on prepaid debit cards and either sent out proactively, or people can apply and we can deliver to them. And that's a program design choice that we have not reached yet, and again, are looking to learn these best practices. But the question on eligibility is, and first off, I'll make a point that another program design element that we've already kind of leaned one way on is whether you make these monthly payments or a single lump sum. And responding to the concern over incentive effects and discouraging individuals from re-entering the workforce, we decided to do a lump sum. So that this isn't a stream of benefits that if you make more money and you become ineligible for, you lose. It's just a single payment to ease that transition as people lose a stream of income that many have been relying on. And then the other eligibility criteria that we need to think about is this targeted at folks who are unemployed? Or more likely, and this is what we're looking at, is this targeted at folks who make less than a given percentage of area median income? Now that's going to be a data-driven analysis, which needs to be essentially how many people make less than 50% AMI? And then how many people do we expect to actually apply to this program? What fraction of the eligible population will actually be served? And so we'll set that fraction of AMI according to that data analysis and move forward. But this is something that we're currently engaged with, as I said, Ignite Cities on kind of analyzing and pulling best practices from other cities so we can get this right.
Okay, so I want to caution you on that program. I look forward to hearing, you know, how you create your criteria, because we can do a lot of focus on people who are low income, But if you made $100,000 a year and you lost your job and you lost the extra $600 a week for unemployment benefits, and we're only targeting those who are quote unquote low income, you know, as an example, that would be beneficiaries, that would not be fair. Because
exactly the kind of insight that we need to inform that. So I said
Yeah.
we're working with Ignite Cities. We're also working with you all, and any insight and feedback you want to offer on that program design is very much welcome, because we don't have all the answers.
Okay. And no, I'm gonna put you on Front Street because I've known you since the Slaves Administration. I think you are a very smart young man. And I don't want you to keep telling me we're looking at best practices. I expect you to create the best practices. So let's stop all this. We're looking at best practices because St. Louis could be a city that creates best practices. Why can't we be the model to make good stuff happen, right? So I just want to put that on your parking list of things to really think about. Okay. So the other thing is, I heard my colleague, Collins Muhammad, talk about the survey. Can we just get a copy of a blank survey? I'm just curious to know, you know, what kind of questions were asked. Because I'm going to have a ward meeting on Tuesday, and I want to have this conversation with my constituents. It'll be our first in-person ward meeting in 14 months, and a lot of people are excited about it. So I like to engage them a little bit in the conversation. When you talked about canvassing and outreach to get more people involved in this process,
We didn't see it.
who actually did the canvassing and outreach?
So we had a largely volunteer effort. So we held a canvas launch at the Deaconess Foundation. I think volunteers, we probably had 20 volunteers, and then another nonprofit contributed about another 20 volunteers. So in all, I think we probably had about 40 volunteers on a Saturday morning that canvassed near the Deaconess Foundation in other parts of, I think, North St. Louis. But I know particularly I was in the 19th Ward near St. Alphonsus Rock. And so we had a lot of coverage in the 19th Ward and perhaps maybe some in the 2nd, but I can't recall exactly, but it was focused in kind of North St. Louis and the 19th Ward. But in addition to that, we passed out flyers at senior centers and were able to have some seniors call the office and report their answers verbally to allow them to participate without having to navigate the website.
And certainly I thank you for that, because I know in my ward, most of the people that come to ward meetings are senior citizens, and a lot of them don't necessarily have access to computer. They certainly don't know much about Twitter and Facebook. So I really appreciate you guys doing that type of outreach. I want to hear a little bit more, Noel, about intentional encampment, because I was hearing that there were conversations with other older people about being intentional about placing encampments in their colleagues' wards. And I'm the kind of person, I don't like rumors, you know, I like fact. You know, politics, you win elections based on rumors and fictitious stuff and all of that, you know, but I like to run campaigns based on facts. I like to govern myself based on facts. So I like to hear more about what does it really mean to say intentional encampments? What is an intentional encampment? And is it true that there are already neighborhoods identified to have these encampments placed?
Another great question. And first and foremost, let me be clear that no sites have been selected. And in fact, we currently have over a dozen sites that we are considering for an intentional encampment. And of course, we won't be setting up a dozen intentional encampments. So when a site rises high enough in our list, we are reaching out to aldermen in order to start that conversation. We are not going to be finalizing any decisions until we have involved not just the aldermen, but the community fully, because each of these encampments will be accompanied by a good neighbor agreement, where we make commitments in terms of security and protocols around the encampment. As to what an intentional encampment is, we're exploring a few different models. And again, this is driven, I must admit, by some best practices, in particular by our friends in Denver. But we are building on that. And one model that we've identified here in partnership with the St. Louis Public Schools that could work is essentially taking vacant school property, in particular using gymnasiums, and transforming the gymnasium into a multi-purpose building that can be a cafeteria, laundry, storage facility, and then setting up on the parking lots outside tents, or we are also considering pallet homes. So there are, again, a variety of design considerations and options that we are exploring. But what the intentional encampment will look like, it'll first and foremost, it'll be fenced in. It'll have a green privacy screen wrapped around the fence. It'll have food available. It'll have a management trailer for staff to conduct case management interviews, screenings, treatments. We may also have mobile health clinics such as the Phineas Clinic or others visiting the encampment regularly on a daily basis, as well as other direct service providers. So again, we are looking at a variety of locations. One thing that we feel strongly about is that we shouldn't just shun these vulnerable populations away from the city or away from where the city has capacity to support. The city is built to deliver services. We have the Department of Human Services. We have the Slate Agency on Training and Employment. We have a Community Development Agency. We have a Department of Health. We can, with private partners, build something that supports this community. Because the truth is, and the kind of key principle that this is all rooted in, is that we are going to have encampments one way or another. And they are going to present certain security risks, not just to the neighborhood that they are in, but in particular to the individuals at the encampment. And since we know that this is going to happen, it's been a reality in our city for a long time. The question is how we manage it, and whether we are capable of preparing and delivering services to ensure that the outcomes are as positive as possible. And so we are also looking, one more concrete detail that I'll offer is essentially the city will build the intentional encampment, and BPS has made really incredible progress. I really have to give a hand to the city agencies, BPS, DHS, the planning department, so many others that have pulled together to really figure out an operational plan and conduct this site selection process. But then the city will set it up, and then we'll conduct an RFP process for a third-party provider, a nonprofit, to operate the encampment. And then, of course, we will work to set up an ecosystem of services and referrals, which will be visiting the encampment on a daily basis.
Thank you. I want to go back to some of the mayor's commitments during her campaign and some of the things that she said. And although everybody think I hate the mayor, I do not hate the mayor, for the record. The mayor and I have disagreements on some things, but I want to ensure that, you know, the mayor is successful, because if the mayor is successful, the city of St. Louis is successful. And I say that in sincerity, but it's not going to change who I am. It's not going to stop me from challenging things that I don't think are the best ideas. And so one of the things that the mayor talked about that I was inspired by, she talked about some of our issues are regional, right? You know, and one of the biggest regional problems we have is homelessness. And it appears that the mayor and the county executive, Sam Page, has a very strong relationship. It's apparent that they're doing things together and collaboratively, and it sounds really nice, some of the things that I'm hearing about in the news, but I don't feel it impacts St. Louis for real. But one of the things that St. Louis County can do that can impact the city of St. Louis, that can help the city of St. Louis, and that's a regional approach, is to deal with the homeless situation. St. Louis County does absolutely nothing to deal with homeless. The city of St. Louis is pretty much, I don't want to sound disparaging, but it's the dumping ground for homeless. Is to serve the homeless. If you want to serve homeless, ship them to the city of St. Louis. They will take care of that situation. That's not right. That's not regional collaboration. St. Louis County probably has way more open land and space than we do in some of our wards that we're trying to build new housing and welcome new good neighbors to our community. I'm really interested in hearing from the mayor, where is the regional approach to dealing with homelessness? St. Louis County has stimulus money. St. Louis City has stimulus money, but why should we be the only government entity within this region that is laser focused on homelessness? Help me out with that.
I think it's a great point, and I'd love to tell the planning department tomorrow to expand our site selection search to the county.
Okay, so I want to hear from the mayor on the record. For the record, I want to hear from the mayor what the collaboration with St. Louis County Executive Sam Page looks like as it relates to addressing homelessness, because I don't feel that we should have the overwhelming burden of dealing with this. And I would think that the HUD's committee would certainly be willing to work collaboratively, or certain members of our committee will be willing to work collaboratively with city council members on this particular issue. Again, this funding that is coming down is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we need to make sure we expend these funds in the best way possible. We need to maximize the use of these funds by leveraging other partners, just as we're leveraging with non-for-profit entities that are providing great services to our community. Okay?
I couldn't agree more.
In my community, I'm going to be selfish for a moment. I deal with a lot of sex workers. And I know for a fact in the 11th ward, you know, my colleague, Alderwoman Martin, deals with the same issue. And we've actually, you know, traveled each other's wards for these experiences. So a lot of times people in my community think, oh, it doesn't happen in South St. Louis. They just do it in North St. Louis. They don't care over here. We have to look at all of this and it's horrible. And I've raised my children in an environment where when they go to school and get on the school bus, they have to deal with sex workers. And we're frustrated with that. However, I want to say that I support programs to help them, to get them out of that system in a more productive system where they can be reconnected with their families, especially their children. Because I've actually been monitoring a person or two for over 10 years. And I've actually seen this person have 3 babies, you know, while being a sex worker for 10 years. I'm interested in partnering with the mayor's administration to support some organization. I know I'm working personally with someone that's in my community that really genuinely cares, and that person doesn't look like me, you know, and I'll call her name, Sarah White, and she gives up her own time unselfishly to try to help people in this community. I think that we need, just as we are focusing on homelessness, we need to focus on people who are trapped in this system where, you know, young ladies have to sell their bodies in order to feed a drug habit or maybe even pay a bill. So I didn't see anything, and that's probably something that we can work on again in the next round. But I wanted to say to you publicly that that is a priority for me. And I don't mind if it's housed in the 22nd ward somewhere, a house or something, that a facility that can support people that's caught up in that system. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And if I missed it in your presentation where there's room for that, talk to me about it right now.
Sure. I hear you loud and clear, and I think that is an incredibly noteworthy cause that we are interested in working with you on. I will say that a lot of this relief is about bringing people out of the shadows and getting them, helping them get on their feet, whether it deals with mental health issues, whether it deals with being behind, getting back on your feet is really something that is at the center of this proposal, but it's also a part of Board Bill 1. And in Board Bill 1, there is a commitment to increase social workers that can deal with some of your constituents that deal with these type of issues. And there are other resources that are a part of Board Bill 1 that we think really will help people get back on their feet and really get out of the shadows. But with respect to sex workers, I think that is something that we would be interested in helping people connect with some of the wraparound services, behavioral services, workforce development services that are both a part of the suggestions in Board Bill 2 and a part of the resources that have been expanded in Board Bill 1.
Okay, but Jared, having social workers go out on the street and talk to these young ladies is one thing, but having resources provided for them where they can actually go to a facility and get off the street. We're talking the same thing. You want to get homeless people off the street? I want to get sex workers off the street, right? And so I'm just saying that needs to be our priority as well. And this direct relief, I want people to know that $80 million is not a magical number. That is just a number the mayor came up with, or the mayor's administration came up with. But we have an opportunity, and that's why we have this legislative branch of government. And that's why we have these hearings, because it's an opportunity for the public. It's an opportunity for the alderman that represents a certain type of constituency to say, hey, I have a great idea too. Maybe we can add this. And that's what this conversation is all about. And I know people have been teed up to kind of challenge the Board of Aldermen and demand that we do something, but that's all counterproductive because that's not my style. Because most people that know me, the best way to get me to dig in is to bully me, because I'm not going to do anything. And you're not going to get anything if you try to bully me. What I'm interested in is a collaborative relationship. And I think the committee, and I can speak on behalf of the committee, we are interested in a collaborative relationship with Room 200, in which all of our constituents across the city can win, and using the mayor's words, can thrive. We're all in this together. So understand, everybody that's listening to my voice, $80 million is not the magical number. We have an opportunity to make 80 million, 100 million. We can make 80 million, 160 million if we want to, because the legislative branch has the authority to do that. And I'm interested, there is almost nothing in this $80 million that the administration is asking for that I disagree with. Nothing. I'm on record with that. There's nothing that I disagree with, because why? It services the whole city of St. Louis. And I think I can speak on behalf of the majority of the committee when I can say majority of us, the majority of the $80 million will agree. Now, some committee members may have some questionable, some questions about some of the stuff, right? But that doesn't mean that you still can't get what you want on behalf of the constituents that we all serve. Because there's 28 of us aldermen. There's a president that serves the whole community, and there's a mayor that serves the whole community. So I'm saying all that really with enthusiasm, because I want us to work collaboratively. I want us to be able to better serve our community, because there's some things outside of that. Here's another thing that I'm passionate about. As a person who came to a socially economic depressed neighborhood in my 20s, doing a redevelopment project, I've seen what this community looked like in 1992. But I also saw what it looked like in 1972. Okay? So I want to imagine what it can look like in 2022, right? And I am here to want to support and help move a process in a direction where, again, we can all thrive. Now, I saw like $2.5 million, I think it was, in home repair. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm talking real fast and I got all these screens up.
It was $2 million for senior services. But may I also comment on your remarks?
No, let me finish though, and then you can.
Great.
So, because I want to talk about my passion, because this is not just about the mayor, right? This is about, you know, the Board of Aldermen and our constituents individually as well. So someone who's been passionate about redevelopment of a community and home repair and have been experiencing constituents that have been on the home repair list for 3 years or 4 years, and some of them die before they ever get, you know, service. I'm interested in partnering with the mayor's office. And I really want to tell you that $2 million is not enough to me. And I'm going to be offering an amendment to do $15 million, because we have 997 people on the waiting list. And if you just took what I think the current maximum is like $30,000, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to take $30,000 as a number. That means we need over $12 million to wipe out that waiting list, to wipe it out. But I want to go farther than that, because I am interested in ensuring that our seniors can stay in their home for 2 decades, at least if possible. But we have to give them the resources to do that. We have people who are struggling just to stay in their home, as well as people who we're trying to help get into housing, okay? So we can do both. And I'm excited about the fact that we can actually do both. And so I will be working within the framework of Board Bill number 2 to ensure that we have way more than $2 million in there, because I believe, as you talked about, Noel, direct relief, and Jared, this direct relief, that's a buzzword. I have people that need direct relief right now just to sustain their house, because people need new roofs and people's homes are falling down. And so I want to work with you, especially as the chairman of HUDs, to get that money out. I heard Noel say we'll be evaluated on August, was it 31st, Noel?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Okay, on how we get it out. And I'm gonna help push to ensure that we get it out in a way that is very responsible. But here's another critical piece of all of this. Process is everything. And we can't just sign off on stuff that sounds good. I'm interested in knowing more details about how these programs will actually operate. Because I'm going to tell you, like my colleague from the 18th, Jesse Todd, who goes off a lot of times about the government. I don't trust City Hall most of the time. And so I want to have it in writing. What exactly are you going to do with this program? And what are the safeguards? What is the matrix that we're going to use to ensure that we can evaluate its effectiveness? That's important too. And I would think, Noel, that is something that, as a critical thinker as you are, is something that you'd be interested in. Now back to you, Noel. Go ahead.
Appreciate it. And there are extraordinary safeguards put in place by the federal government, but we will also gladly stipulate to any additional requirements for accountability that the board may see are necessary within reason, of course. Now, really appreciate your support for our $80 million proposal, or at least the majority of it, as well as your cooperation in moving it through in an expeditious manner. Also appreciate you identifying a real gap. I don't think that we talked specifically about a program for sex workers, and I do think that that's important. I think there are ways in which the monies that we are talking about could be used to serve that vulnerable population. For example, we are building tiny home villages for the unhoused population and for veterans. Perhaps sex workers are other potential residents of those tiny home communities. And same with the millions of dollars that we have allocated to wraparound services and case But I thank you for highlighting that gap and would welcome amendments to add funds for that communities, as well as to fill any other gaps that there may be, and in fact, which there are, because again, we're asking you to build on this. But to that point, and also very quickly on the home repair piece, I actually happened to speak to the Community Development Administration today on the home repair program. And they did mention that you had called asking about capacity to issue $15 million in home repair. And they were quite clear that unfortunately CDA currently only has the capacity to allocate probably a maximum of $1 to $2 million in additional home repair funds this year at least, which is not to say that we cannot include pieces in this direct relief package to expand that capacity and be able long-term to deliver much more, because I agree that it is necessary. I'm just simply articulating a constraint as I heard it from our not director, because that's Matt Moak at the city councilor's office, but the acting administrative team. And I would also welcome a conversation. I'm happy to set it up with you, the team, and myself, so we can figure out to what extent that capacity constraint is real and what the maximum amount of home repair dollars that we can push out in an expeditious fashion are. Most importantly, though, I do have a small ask for the HUD's committee, and that is to the extent that you do approve of this framework that we have presented to you all today, to adopt it as a committee sub. And then you can build on it. You can offer amendments. You can make cuts. You can make additions. But I just don't understand why we must keep working with a framework that grew out of the Crewson administration that's intended to allocate $500 million to both infrastructure and direct relief, and which actually currently is a fill-in-the-blanks bill with all the dollar figures just cut out, because the categories don't actually match what city departments are ready to implement in terms of direct relief. We have worked with city departments, first it was with the Stimulus Advisory Board, then with city departments to take their vision and transform it into actionable, feasible programs, and we're ready to execute on this. But we need to move forward within the legal framework that the administration has put forward, and then we welcome additions to it. But that is my ask to the committee. Adopt our committee sub so that we can move forward.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll come back. I'll come back to you, Alderwoman. So let me be clear. I think the public needs to understand. I hate to give a civics lesson, but we have an executive branch of government, and the mayor runs that, and the mayor controls every department. So when people's grass is not being cut, it's on the mayor. When the police is not doing what they're supposed to do, it's on the mayor. When your trash isn't being picked up, it's on the mayor. When you don't get the city services that you deserve, it's on the mayor. It's not on the alderman, okay? So there's an executive branch of government that takes care of the constituency and their services for the most part. Then you have the legislative branch of government. So the legislative branch of government, I'm not being condescending. I think people need to know, especially people have been whipped up into certain type of ideologies. There's a legislative branch of government. Our responsibility is to create laws to help manage city government. I'm one that's an alderman. I don't like to create laws that are policy related laws. We create a framework in which the executive branch can operate in so they can create whatever policies that they need to. But we as a legislative branch of government, we have our own processes and we have our own way of governing. And I don't think it's fair that people are trying to force the legislative branch of government into doing something that it's not ready to do, because we can govern on our own time, notwithstanding any emergencies. And so we have time to really move through this process, and the mayor cannot offer a committee substitute to the legislative branch of government because the mayor is the executive branch. So the process works like this. The mayor works with a sponsor of a bill, and in this case, it's President Reed, who has board bill number 2, to work out I'm gonna call first round committee substitute. Because really what you're asking, Noel, is for us to adopt a first round committee substitute that's been presented to us by the mayor, which is out of order, okay? But that doesn't mean that we can't do it, but you're not gonna make us do it personally. Nobody outside of the legislative branch is gonna make us do it. When you have certain type of relationships, you work with each other, you harmonize situations, and the process flows fluidly. And so even if we adopted the text of this committee substitute, we still have a lot of work to do. And so we'll have a committee substitute as amended by the time we finish this process. So there's really no need to do a committee substitute today because it's going to be amended. And so why not just allow us to finish our process so that when we do adopt the committee substitute, hopefully with 100% of what the mayor wants, but also recommendations from other constituencies, including the Board of Aldermen, to make it a near final committee substitute. Does that kind of make sense?
I hear, I guess, a lot of process in those comments, and we certainly respect the legislative process that the Board of Aldermen takes with respect to our city. But we do want to impress upon the committee and the public the urgency of the matter. And, you know, we went through a very deliberate yet urgent process, and we stand ready to work with the HUD's committee and the sponsor of the bill, as we did in inviting him into the Stimulus Advisory Board and working with his staff on communicating this, and working both in this meeting and tomorrow to advance this process based upon the urgent needs of the city of St. Louis residents. Because it's really not about the mayor, it's not about our egos in the mayor's office, it's not about the community members that were chosen to serve on the Stimulus Advisory Board, but it really is about the COVID-19 crisis that we still face, particularly with our low rates of vaccination. And it's about the impending housing crisis and eviction crisis that we face. So while we certainly respect the legislative process, we do want to be very clear about the reason that the mayor has requested that we, as the mayor and our partners in government, act in accordance to get St. Louisans the relief that they desperately need while COVID is on the uprise and we face an eviction crisis. And even though we received a month-long extension today, the programs that are needed to really reach people can't be turned on overnight. And the sooner that we're able to connect people to resources, the better and safer that people will be. So what I will say is that we certainly respect your process and that we stand ready to continue to work with you to get this, to address the urgent needs that our community is facing right now.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
So
Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to come back to you, Mr. President. Hold up for a second. So, Jared, let's be clear and let's agree on something. Let's agree that the sky isn't going to fall on July the 1st, so there's a reprieve for evictions. Can we agree on that?
I would say that there is a slight reprieve on evictions, but the longer that we take, the longer it takes for us to actually stand up to programs that are going to keep people safe in their homes. And then I would also say that with respect to vaccinations and the spread of COVID-19, and the spread of the Delta variant, we can't ignore the risk that that poses, particularly to communities that we talked about earlier that have about 20% vaccination rate. So as I stated earlier, we stand ready to work with the committee and the bill sponsor to address the crisis that we are facing and will soon face worse.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask that we quit creating fear in our constituents, because we're talking about if the board bill, if you allow, and if you really want to work with the legislative branch, if you allow us to work through this process, support us in working through this process, the bill could be passed by July the 17th. And I believe the president on Tuesday made that commitment that that's the objective, to get it done. And I look forward to hearing Mr. McMillan from the Urban League, who I know is a recipient to deal with some of this rental assistance. Heck, we could give him $5 million today, and I guarantee you he can't spend it in 2 weeks. So I think we're okay. I think there's a cushion. So I want to stop creating this fear with our constituents that the sky is going to fall and people are going to, fall into the river if we don't pass this bill out by June 30th. That's disingenuous, and that's not fair. And that's not going to help the process if we keep talking like that. And I'm going to yield to the president because it's his bill, and then Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee and residents who showed up to listen to this meeting tonight. I've been here, at the board, over 20 years, and I've never seen a process that has been so distorted as this one has been, and politicized. We were able to put the funding together and get it passed under the previous administration. Everybody worked together, we collaborated, and we got it done in record time with none of the stuff that we see happening now. When we look at, where we are today and the length of time that it's going to take us to pass this board bill, and the fact that 45 days had been spent already by the mayor's office and the outside committee, we've lost 45 days. The Board of Aldermen has had it for exactly 7 days. But our time continues to be distracted by all of the antics that are being pulled outside of City Hall. It is, it's borderline shameful. We really need to work together to address the issues in a comprehensive manner, to continue to bring up a committee substitute that we essentially just received, and we just received the details of it just now, is just outrageous. And to have taken 45 days of the time and then drop it on us and say, okay, why don't you have it done in a week? That shows either an absolute, complete misunderstanding of the legislative branch of any government in the United States of America, or just that absolute disregard. I don't know which one it is. I know we've had these discussions privately about, whether we should introduce this as a committee substitute. But that also shows a complete either disregard or unparalleled misunderstanding or lack of understanding of the legislative branch of city government, where if we have a committee substitute, we need to get the things ready to put in the committee substitute. And that's part of what we will do when we have a committee substitute formed. But I can tell you, as a sponsor of the bill, nobody has sat down with me in a line by line detail and walked through a quote unquote committee substitute. The clerk has not had a properly introduced committee substitute delivered to him. So again, it is just, it's maddening that we are having these discussions on such an important topic. We spent half the week talking about the world was going to end if we didn't continue the program for rental assistance. And we have nearly $8 million sitting in an account for rental assistance. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in accounts that are unspent. And all we would have to do is to encumber $100,000 for the month of July to pay the outside consultants, which would take exactly 5 to 10 minutes to complete. But instead of addressing that in a real substantive manner, we have the administration that's taken to social media with their social media partners. They're sending out text messages telling people how the Board of Aldermen is failing the city. I mean, I am just dumbfounded by the approach that they've taken on this really important issue. And again, I need to remind people, under the Cruisen administration, that package was far more complex because we had funding sources coming in from a whole bunch of different sources. We had to buckle all those things together, and we had to do it in record time. And guess what? We got it. We all put our shoulders to the wheel and we got it done. You didn't hear about all this stuff. You didn't see all of these childish antics going on. None of this stuff happened. So I'm calling on the administration to begin to work in a true collaborative fashion, to do what the public sent you here to do. The Board of Aldermen, we can do it. We've proven it. We just passed the stimulus package. We passed it. It went into law. It's what everybody is getting relief from today. So just stop with the childish outbursts. We need to get down to work and get some work done. And we need to do it now. And please please, for Lord Jesus Christ, don't bring us say, oh, why don't you introduce our committee substitute again? If you understood the legislative branch and the processes, you would understand how outrageous that statement is right now. Let's work with this committee and the rest of the people in the city of St. Louis to get the package done and get it passed out as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I'm not sure if the president really meant childish. He probably meant to say something.
I'm that frustrated. You know what? Probably nobody has seen me. You've never heard me say that before, because this is something that I have never experienced before. This level of
Okay, so we're going to calm down and we're going to be respectful to each other. And we're going to try to use different words. And that's coming from somebody who does a Hail Mary with some words. So I'm just trying to keep everybody cool and calm.
I take that back.
And so I want to go to the Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question. What I'd like to do is to bring us back to the published purpose of the meeting, which was to have a public hearing. And so the public has been sitting there, 16 speakers, 4 letters of engagement that needed to have been read. And what we have to do now is to make a decision on if we would like to end our meeting and invite the public back only for a public hearing and not for the committee, but just for the public. I think that is a good way for us to get some concrete information on what is available to be done by who, and their expectations of time and funding and all those things that are critical for us as we are deliberating. There's also, I believe that the president of the Board of Aldermen also had a plan that he would like to delineate as well. And so we have not achieved that tonight either. So I would just wanted to ask how would you like to move forward? And most especially with the public hearing, having that available for the public.
We have it.
Thank you for your comments, Alderwoman. The intent was to have the mayor's office do a presentation and that the committee ask questions. This bill bill number 2 has been discussed. So we're open for discussion and we will get to public comment. Matter of fact, you are helping me transition right into that. So we're going to go into the public comment portion right now. And we're going to go first up, and please, if I butcher your name, charge it to my head, not my heart. I don't mean to, but I'm going to say the first person up is Emily Southside or something like that on Hartford.
Very good guess.
Okay.
Good first attempt.
Okay, so Emily, here's the rule. Okay, so we have to swear you in. Okay, and also you need to state your name, and if you're speaking as an individual, state your name and your address. If you're speaking for an organization, state your name and state the organization and the address of the organization. Okay, so the first thing is, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You swear, something like that, but I think I'm close. I'm new at this new rule that we have. I have to swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me God, yes, I do.
Okay, so you have 3 minutes, and I'm going to tell you when you have 30 seconds, okay?
Great. Thank you so much, Chairman Boyd. I really appreciate that. My name is Emily Kelso. I am a resident of the 15th Ward from the Hartford Street, 3833 Hartford Street. I am also here as a representative of the St. Louis Public Schools Parent Action Council, of which I am the new chair. St. Louis Parent Action Council does not currently have a street address, but we are in the process of working on that. So thank you for the opportunity to address this committee tonight. As I said, I'm a resident of the 15th Ward. My children, of which I have 3, attend St. Louis Public Schools in the 24th and 7th Wards. So I speak to you tonight as a proud St. Louis Public School parent. I am here in my capacity as chair of the St. Louis Parent Action Council, which is a group that represents families and caregivers of St. Louis Public School students. And I wanted to take time tonight to ensure that you heard from parents of SLPS students as you consider the proper way to allocate stimulus and recovery funds. St. Louis Public Schools serves over 20,000 children across the city of St. Louis, including children at high risk of illness, including COVID, children who are unhoused, children experiencing food insecurity, children at risk of death or injury from gun violence, and children experiencing mental health struggles and trauma. The suggestions that were made here on how to spend this money, they all consider these various populations without making specific mention of the children in these groups. And one thing I want the Board of Aldermen to consider is who picks up the slack when we fail to center St. Louis Public School children in our decisions. Alongside parents and caregivers, it is so much of the time the teachers, administrators, and staff of the St. Louis Public Schools district who provide that support that is so critically needed. Yet I don't see any place in the proposed plans where St. Louis Public Schools was consulted on how to distribute these funds or implement these programs. The decisions made here in this committee will have a direct impact on the health, safety, and success of my children, of their friends and classmates, and all of the children enrolled across St. Louis Public Schools. Quite frankly, for too long, the Board of Aldermen and the Mayor's office have not considered the specific needs of St. Louis Public School families and students in their decisions. And I ask you tonight to change your focus. Center the needs of our St. Louis Public School children in your decisions about how to spend this money. Invite St. Louis Public School officials and school leaders to the table every time a decision needs to be made. Fully and totally fund
30 seconds.
School childcare programs and recreational opportunities every chance you get. And when you make a decision, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. Have I reached out to St. Louis Public Schools in my ward and asked for their input? How will the money I spend create better conditions for St. Louis Public School students in my ward? And how can I decrease the burden on parents by making these decisions? Thank you very much for your time. I've sent public comments to all of your inboxes with contact information, and I will also send you an invitation to our first Parent Action Council meeting on September 16th so that you can see the good work that we've already done. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I yield it back to Chairman Boyd.
Man, you are a star. You hit it. You nailed it with 3 minutes. Thank you so much. And thank you for your comments and hanging in with us. Next up is Nicole Nelson. Is Nicole Nelson with us? Nicole Nelson going once. Nicole Nelson going twice. Nicole Nelson, you're out of the game. Next up is Justin Eidelberg. Is Justin Eidelberg with us? Justin Eidelberg going once. Justin Eidelberg going twice. Justin Eidelberg, you are out. Next up is Gloria Nolan. Is Gloria? No, I see Gloria Nolan. I see Miss Nolan. I see you. You can unmute yourself. Okay, so.
Okay.
You are unmuted. So Miss Nolan, again, you're going to tell us who you are, where you live, if you're representing yourself as an individual living within the city of St. Louis, or you represent an organization and what address of that organization. You're going to have 3 minutes and I have to swear you in. Ms. Nolan, do you swear to tell the truth before this committee? Nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right. You have 3 minutes right now.
Greetings, everybody, to the members of the Board of Aldermen and the Housing and Urban Development and Zoning Committee and the members of the Stimulus Advisory Team. I'm Gloria Nolan, resident of the city of St. Louis, 4184 Sacramento Avenue, and I also am a parent in St. Louis Public Schools. It is my pleasure to speak with you all. I am, like I said, a wife and a mother of 2 children attending St. Louis Public Schools, as well as a proud graduate of the district. Tonight, I come in support of Board Bill 2. As presented by the Stimulus Advisory Board. I believe that the proposal presented by the committee is organized and has intentionality in addressing some of the needs of our community. In particular, I see the areas of the package addressing the needs of our most vulnerable population, our youth, are essential in moving our community forward. Currently, 1 in 5 students in St. Louis Public Schools are categorized as homeless. A strategic plan to address the housing needs in the form of housing assistance and funds allocated to the unhoused population is imperative. In addition, closing the gap on the digital divide through the expansion of internet access is vital. During the 2020-2021 school year, St. Louis Public Schools embarked on a district-wide virtual learning program for a large portion of the school year, causing many students to depend on hotspot technology that was not reliable throughout the full school day. Ask me how I know. Creating sustainable internet access across the city for both students and community members is a must. And then finally, supporting youth jobs and programming such as before and after care program options are needed. Young people in our city need access to high quality and safe options for extracurricular activities, jobs, and childcare before and after school. Of the 60 schools in the district, only about 25 have after-school programming options. More children need access and support district-wide. The pandemic has taught us so much, and now more than ever, we need to work together as a collective to meet the needs of our students and youth. St. Louis Public Schools is diligently working on plans to meet the student needs with its additional funding, and I believe that our city should be able to pick up where the district leaves off, taking special care to include parents and other key stakeholders, such as St. Louis Public Schools, in the decision-making process. Plans drafted by the Stimulus Committee are definitely a step in the right direction. And I look forward as a parent in St. Louis Public Schools in engaging more around these issues to strengthen our city and our district. We are who we have been waiting for, and thank you for your time.
And thank you, Ms. Nolan, for your participation. We greatly appreciate it. Next up is Dr. Michael P. McMillan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and also the president, and members of the mayor's administration and the community. It is a pleasure to be with you, having previously served on the HUD's committee for 10 years and also having previously served in the mayor's office. And I am here tonight on behalf of the Urban League and do swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Our address is 1408 North Kings Highway at Martin Luther King. As a very strong and strategic partner of the city, of which we are exceptionally grateful for all of the work that we do together, many of the things that are listed in the stimulus that was presented tonight in the bill and the package, quite frankly, are things that we work on every single day at the Urban League. So from housing, utility assistance, food, and everything from early childcare with our Head Start program and so many other things, we are looking forward to being able to provide as much as we can for as many as we can, as soon as we can. And so, of course, you all have laid out the legislative process, and of course, there have been discussions and urgency presented by the mayor's office as a not-for-profit social service and advocacy organization that partners with you. You know, our request would be that everyone work together as well as you can, as quickly as you can, for the benefit of the community. And understanding that, of course, the process is very complicated, and we do find ourselves at a very unique moment in history because, to the very best of my knowledge, none of us have ever lived at a time where the city had a windfall of over $500 million available and an opportunity for true transformative, equitable change. So as quickly as you all can work together in the best manner possible, I think it would be beneficial, obviously, to all of us. And we appreciate the work that has been put in by the committee. And we are here to partner with you in any way that we can going forward so that these wraparound services that our people need are so desperately going to be able to be provided. Thank you, sir.
And thank you. And for the committee, I'm going to apologize. I didn't read Mr. McMillan the same rights that I read everybody else. I kind of fell back into a nostalgic area where he was an alderman. So I should have done it, but you can tell he's a professional because he did it on my behalf. So I want to thank him for doing that. That's just the kind of guy he is. And that's why St. Louis is better for him being where he is. So thank you, Mr. McMillan, for your contributions. Next up is Mr. Maurice Howard. Is Mr. Maurice Howard with us? Mr. Howard? Going twice. Mr. Howard going 3 times. Mr. Howard, you're out.
He's on there. He's on there.
Is he on?
Yeah, he's muted.
Okay, well, while he figures out to unmute himself, we're gonna go on and I'll come back to him.
There he is. There he is.
Is he? I don't see him. Where is
he?
Are you there, Mr. Howard? Hello? Okay, I cannot hear Mr. Howard. But we'll come back. I'll come back to him after Lindsay Noblot. Is Lindsay Noblot, Noblot.
Yep, I'm here.
You're there.
I'm here.
Okay. Is it Noblot? Noblot? How do you pronounce it?
It's Noblot.
Noblot. Okay.
It's Nobla in French.
All right, Miss.
You want to go down that road?
Miss Noblot, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
So again, you state your name as an individual, what your address is, if you represent the organization, the name of the organization, the address of the organization. You have 3 minutes. Go.
Thank you so much. My name is Lindsay Noblot, and I live at 4212 Flad in the 8th Ward. I also am a small business owner in the 6th Ward. My husband and I own a fitness studio called Flow State. In addition to that, I'm a special projects director at Southside Early Childhood Center. located at 2101 Jefferson Avenue at the corner of Russell and Russell and Jefferson. So I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me to have a few minutes of your time. I first of all want to thank Mayor Jones and her staff for taking a tremendous amount of time and effort putting this plan together. And I appreciate all the support and community input that has been involved from the beginning. They had a tremendous team in the Stimulus Advisory Board. So I couldn't be happier that many of those folks, you know, are leaders in the community. I also just wanted to say thank you to the Board of Aldermen and the HUD's committee for really thinking this through and ensuring that folks have input on this process. I will say that I'm opposed to this board bill too, because the mayor's bill that she originally came forward with has everything that we need to move forward as quick as possible to ensure that we get started on direct relief as soon as possible. So just a little bit about what I do at Southside and why it's important. I'm a mother of a 2-year-old. I'm a city resident in the 8th, like I mentioned, and I work at Southside Early Childhood Center. We're a Head Start and Early Head Start center. We predominantly serve children of color, refugees, and immigrants, all of which have been terribly affected by the last year. And every day, we're working on the front line to support workers and to support mothers to ensure that they go back to work during this really difficult time. We're the oldest childcare facility west of the Mississippi. In addition to that, I understand that it's been a tough year on everybody, but it's been especially tough on moms. We've been pushed to exhaustion trying to juggle life, work, and virtual learning, but still it feels like our country and state and city does not warrant our needs as a priority. So I just ask all of you right now to think about how this all affects single moms and moms like me and moms that have the least access to childcare. And I ask you to fund childcare. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say for the record, because somebody has put out some misinformation about comparing some bills. And some people are saying that they're against Board Bill number 2.
It's the mayor's
but Board Bill number 2 right now is a placeholder. The mayor has offered a proposal. And so we've had a presentation on the mayor's proposal. So when you say you're against Board Bill number 2, you're almost saying you're against the mayor's proposal, which should be included in Board Bill number 2.
I will say that it was required for me to say if I was opposed or.
I know.
So in order to be on the public hearing.
So it was confusing. So I just want, so I want to clear that up because it is confusing when we ask, are you opposed or you know, if you're for or against something. So, all right. So thank you again. Just for everybody else, if you want to say you're against it, you're not really against it. So, because it's not really before us. So again, thank you, Ms. Noblat. Appreciate your comments. Next up is Ms. Melissa Pashia, P-A-S-H-I-A.
Thank you. It's Pasha.
Pasha. Okay, now Pasha, when people give testimony, we would prefer that they show their face when they give testimony. I mean, we understand if you're on a phone, but if you're actually on a Zoom call, it just kind of helps us interact with you better. So thank you so much.
Sure.
And say again how you pronounce it?
It's Pasha.
Pasha. Okay. So, Miss Pasha, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee?
I do.
Okay. So, again, if you're representing yourself as an individual, your name, your address, if it's a business, your name, the business, and the business address. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for allowing me to address the board. I'm Melissa Pesha with the Metropolitan St. Louis Equal Housing and Opportunity Council. Our office is located at 1027 Vandeventer on the 6th floor, and I'm here to speak in support of Mayor Jones' proposal. We're urging the Board of Aldermen to quickly and efficiently adopt Mayor Jones' proposal for direct relief. Board Bill number 2 does not list categories or types of activities that are to be funded, whereas Mayor Jones' plan was developed with sufficient input from the Stimulus Advisory Board and significant community engagement. This plan outlines a detailed strategy to utilize these relief funds, guaranteeing urgent economic relief to families who have already lost so much in the last year and a half. Relief funding to help small businesses suffering as a result of the pandemic, and also to assist our city's most vulnerable residents. A delay of refunds would further harm residents of the city of St. Louis. Direct relief funds are needed now. Critical funding for vaccine efforts, rental assistance, mortgage assistance, utility assistance, and legal services to prevent thousands of potential evictions, among other critical needs. The eviction moratorium is currently set to expire on July 31st, which places thousands of St. Louis families at risk of losing their present home. When the CARES Act funding ends on July 1st, even fewer resources will be available to families that are struggling. We cannot afford to delay the funding any further, and the Board of Aldermen should please pass Mayor Jones' proposal by July 1st. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Pasha, I just want to clarify. So are you speaking on behalf of MSD and Equal Opportunity Housing Council?
Yes, EHOC asked me to speak. I'm not a resident of St. Louis City. I just work in the city with clients that live in the city of St. Louis. So I work with a lot of families that are city residents.
And EHOC is, again, what is it? What does it stand for?
Metropolitan St. Louis Equal Housing and Opportunity Council.
Okay, great. And their address?
1027 Vandeventer, 6th floor.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next up is
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure to underscore, people are continuing to compare Board Bill number 2 to the mayor's proposal. Board Bill number 2 was intentionally put in as a placeholder bill. And just for the record, I talked to the mayor when I put it in. I said, I'm going to put in a placeholder bill and give you time to finish your review or whatever you're going to do. That took them 45 days. They got back to us last, we heard about the final proposal middle of last week. So now we have possession of it. We received the final proposal tonight, but Board Bill number 2 is not and should not be compared and put out as a final plan because there's no planning in it. It is a placeholder bill. That's it.
right. Thank you, Mr. President. Next, we're going to go back to Mr. Maurice Howard. It's my understanding that he has his audio working. Mr. Howard, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Howard, can you turn your video on?
Yes, I can. And of course, my video is not working all of a sudden.
Maybe you're in a dark room. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Howard, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUD's committee tonight?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so the ground rules are you state your name. If you're speaking as an individual, state your name, your address. If you're speaking as a business, you state your name, the business, and the business address. Got it?
Yep.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
I'm speaking for myself. Name is Maurice Howard. Address is 5452 Partridge, St. Louis, Missouri. Of course, 63120. I just want to touch on a couple of points. It's coming from the heart. I like to say I'm just a regular person that wants to make a difference. The thing is that I noticed in the bill is $650,000 was allocated to nothing but nets. And that's cool and all, but I think more should be allocated to the learning labs. Only $464,000 is allocated toward the learning labs. And I heard a bunch, and as we all know, that crime is a big deal in St. Louis City. And I just believe that we have to start at the root of the problem, and more money has to be allocated more to the youth between 6 and 17 years old. But we can catch them early. We can kind of stop the root of the problem. It'll just make the city better as a whole. But we have to start with the youth, and more money. I think I added it up. It came to about $4.5 million. But we're getting $80 million and probably more. I just want to make sure that the youth are not forgotten, and that we actually realize that a lot of our problems in the city is coming from the youth not having the correct outlet, and we kind of cater it to more of the older teenagers when we should be starting at the younger the younger age groups. Also, I noticed that select centers will be for learning labs, but it doesn't decide. I didn't get a clear understanding where the labs, how are the locations of the lab will be selected. I believe the Walnut Park is critically a need of infrastructure, and that'll be a great help. And also, I just believe we should market, if we do get some youth programs going, besides just the summer youth programs, that we should market these programs and let the public know that they can have access to those. And that's it. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Howard, for taking your time out this evening to speak with us. We greatly appreciate it. Next
Yes,
up is Jackie Langum, Langum, L-A-N-G-U-M.
It's Langum.
Langum.
Yeah.
You there?
I'm here.
Okay, there you go. All right, Miss Langum, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the not public safety, the HUD's committee?
I do.
All right, so you understand the rules?
I do.
All right, go. You got 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Langham. I'm a resident of the 23rd Ward, where I've owned a home at 6209 Oletha for 8.5 years. I have worked with and on behalf of the unhoused and those at imminent risk of homelessness since moving to St. Louis almost 15 years ago. Just 2 days ago, St. Louis Public Radio reported that at least 5 homeless people froze to death on the streets of our city this past winter, the deadliest winter for St. Louis's homeless residents since 2014. They deserved better from us, and there were things we could have done to save their lives. Instead, the city ignored and refused to listen to the pleas of advocates and volunteers, the people who spent day and night trying to make up for our collective neglect by personally supporting people without homes. These advocates begged the city to remove special permit requirements so they could open a temporary shelter for people to sleep in a warm place, to set aside temporarily rules designed to save property values in order to save lives. Time and again over the course of the past year, I've seen and heard politicians and policymakers put their own interests and partnerships before the lives and well-beings of their neighbors who don't have shelters. I've watched as city representatives walk through encampments downtown telling folks that they had to leave, but not telling them where they could go, and waking them up under the cover of darkness to get rid of the optics of homelessness. For years, this city has refused to act on the input of the unhoused and their advocates. Now you have an opportunity to begin to make up for the unconscionable neglect. We need to meet people where they are and give them what they tell us they need to survive, instead of imposing our expectations of how people should live. We need to make sure that those at imminent risk of homelessness have immediate barrier-free access to rent and utility assistance. The rental debts we are seeing now are the highest I've seen in my career. Too many tenants and landlords have been burned by the previous administration's inadequate effort to facilitate assistance over the course of the last year, and we are running out of time. Far too many people are about to lose their homes because of the city's continued delayed actions. Evictions are taking place daily. Tenants need help today. And Chairman Boyd, the sky has already fallen for far too many people. The number of unhoused families in St. Louis is going to skyrocket in the very near future if the city government does not get it together fast. Our community needs the $12.5 million in rent and utility assistance to keep people in their homes, and the over $25 million for homelessness prevention strategies and wraparound supports. This needs to be a holistic, determined, and efficient effort to prevent more homelessness and to fully support those currently unhoused. It needs to be informed and implemented by the people who will be most directly impacted by it, as recommended by the Stimulus Advisory Board and as outlined in the mayor's plan. Thank you.
And thank you, and the perfect timing. Okay, next up is the most esteemed Reverend Darrell Gray. Is Reverend Gray with us? I saw him earlier.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
There he is. Okay. Reverend Gray, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the Lord our Savior?
Yes, I do affirm to tell
Okay.
the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
All right, you know the rules, right?
Yes, I'm Reverend Darrell Gray. I reside at 4358 Enright Avenue. I live in the 18th Ward, but I'm the associate pastor at Greater Fairfax Missionary Baptist Church in the 3rd Ward. I'm the political advisor for the St. Louis Metropolitan Clergy Coalition and the chair of civic engagement for the Baptist Ministers Association of St. Louis and vicinity. I'm representing myself, but I do give political guidance to those two organizations. Full disclosure, I do want to indicate that our organizations would have liked to have had more input in the process. We were concerned that there were no clergy on the advisory board, but we are thankful that Chief of Staff Boyd, Alderwoman Green, and Alderman Collins Muhammad did reach out to us, and we're working to provide some input moving forward. So thank you very much for that inclusion. I respect the chairman tremendously, but I agree with the previous speaker. The sky has already fallen for countless people who live in dire circumstances in this city. And as clergy, we meet these people, unfortunately, usually when they're in their most dire need. And so I am here in support of Mayor Jones' direct relief package. I understand the process. I appreciate what President Reed has said. If there is any opportunity to do a committee substitute to support these recommendations in their entirety, we hope, we plead, we pray that the committee would consider that. And if not, we support exactly what the mayor has proposed in her relief package. $80 million would go a long way right now to help so many people. And we do believe, as I know you believe, Chairman Boyd, that we need to operate within the process, but with, as Dr. King said, the fierce urgency of now. And as Mr. McMillan said, it is our prayer that the two branches of government will find a way to work together to move above negative political discourse and personalities. Once again, we respect what both branches of government are doing, but we are in a crisis right now, and we understand that process has to be followed. But as much as we can expedite this process, we're hoping and we're praying that we do that. We look forward as clergy organizations to participate moving forward in the outreach, because if we can't get people vaccinated, Chairman Boyd, because of an unwillingness or a suspicion, we're definitely not going to get people to fill out surveys unless they are working with
10
people
seconds
in the community that they know and they trust. So please, committee, work with a sense of urgency. Thank you very much to the mayor, to President Reed, and to your committee, to the HUD committee, for the fabulous work that you're doing to respond to the needs of the least of these. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Gray. Next up is Mr. Glenn Burley.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Burley, let me ask you this. Good evening. So we had Ms. Pasha talk on behalf of Metropolitan St. Louis Equal Housing Opportunity Council, and you're going to speak on behalf of them as well?
Yes, really quickly though.
Okay, all right. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth tonight?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I do.
You know the drill. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it pretty quick, and I'm just going to sort of, second some things other folks said around timeline. So real quick in the chat, I'm sharing.
State your name and the organization for the record.
Sorry, Glenn Burley, Metropolitan St. Louis Equal Housing Opportunity Council. We're located at 1027 South Bannerventer in 63110, and I believe that's 17th Ward. So I think that's all. So real quick, we did just release a report on evictions in St. Louis City and County. just a little over a week ago. And I dropped a link to that in the chat for folks to look at. And I just really want to second folks that are talking about timelines here, because it's not so much that the money is allocated into the account by the time that the eviction moratorium is lifted. It's that that these programs for outreach and stuff are all going by that time. Because unfortunately, the eviction process isn't, it's not going to wait, right? So landlords are going to be filing the paperwork and going to court and stuff. And if the money is only approved right when the moratorium lifts, then it's not going to have its chance to really work and get out there. And that means that the money that would have been allocated is never going to get used, which would be the real tragedy. So that's the main thing I really wanted to really talk about. I wanted to draw attention to our recent report and the fair housing implications that are part of the eviction crisis that we're facing. It's not simply eviction and homelessness. There are very real implications around race, especially single moms are getting hit really hard right now. So I would hope that committee members would consider reading that, learning more, and also really consider, whether or not you go with the mayor's exact outline or something else. Please move quickly so that this money gets out there and starts working, so that we can get people in line, so that they don't get their eviction date before they would get through the process to get the rental assistance.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Burley. Next up is Jen Dean. Miss Jen Dean, D-E-A-N, Miss Dean. Going twice, Miss Dean, 3 times. Moving. Hello? Is Miss Dean there? Okay, moving on. Next up is Miss Sarah DeWilde, or DeWilde, I'm not sure. W-I-L-D-E, Sarah.
Come on, Sarah.
There she is. Okay.
Can you all hear me?
It sounds better now. How do you pronounce your last name?
DeWilde, actually.
DeWilde. Okay,
Yeah,
Ms.
it's,
DeWilde, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUD's committee?
Yes, so help me God.
Okay, you understand the instructions?
Yes, I am Sarah
All right.
DeWilde. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as well as the National Nurses Committee, St. Louis. We are, we are located at 1201 South Grand at St. Louis University Hospital. I myself reside at 4125 K Court in the 12th Ward, 63109. 63106, sorry. I just wanted to comment on support of Mayor Jones's plan. I also want to thank you all for the time that you are giving all of us to communicate with you. COVID-19 has hit the nurses hard, not only in our physical health, those of us who came down with it, myself included, but also our mental health. In Ms. Jones's plan, it does outline things to help with vaccine relief, which is a huge issue that we're having right now. A lot of people are misinformed, malinformed, just don't understand. I run through every single day with doing discharges at the hospital, and people just don't really want it sometimes, and they just don't know, and they just don't have access. This pandemic in itself has proven that the St. Louis City has some work to do when it comes to our global health, our mental health, and our physical health. Prevention is key, and in her plan, she has allocated all kinds of ways to help increase that in our city. And as a nurse, I greatly appreciate knowing that somebody is looking out for us as well. During the pandemic, we did experience a shortage of PPE. Nurses were using N95s multiple days for multiple shifts. Some were broken on our faces whenever we were inside the patient's room of the COVID-19 positive confirmed rooms. And we need the support of this plan to allocate some more funds to go towards protecting the people that were taking care of the people that were most vulnerable. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. DeWilloughby. Appreciate your comments tonight. Next up is Marshall Burnell. Marshall Burnell twice. Marshall Burnell 3 times. We're moving on. Next up is Erlene Shepherd. Erlene Shepherd.
Come on, Arlene.
Erlene Shepherd going twice.
I'm here. Hold on.
You are there?
Yes, I had to get the my video on. I don't know if you can see me or not. All right. So my name is Erlene.
Ms. Shepherd, hold up. Ms. Shepherd, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God before the host committee tonight?
I do.
Okay, proceed. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Erlene Shepherd. I am a rep for the NNU, Nurses, National Nurses United. Our address is 1201 South Grand. And I just wanted to go and wanted to tell you that I work at a level 1 trauma facility in the city of St. Louis. And since the pandemic, we've been bombarded with increased influx of patients. We are challenged with finding ways to impact many with few. Behavioral health providers, nurses, physicians, social workers, and multidisciplinary staff to impact and increase impact that increased issues with limited resources. There has been an increased number of suicides that have occurred, increased domestic violence, depression, drug abuse. So I just wanted to say that the funds that the mayor had allocated, I do support. She has for healthcare, community outreach, community health workers, behavioral health providers, direct support, care workers, vaccine relief. And I think we just need to, the increased outreach to educate people who don't understand. Sometimes when you're in the hospital, things are told to patients and they don't understand. They need layman's term. So I do support Mayor's proposal for those funds. I yield my time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your attendance, Ms. Burnell. Next up, I'm sorry, that's Ms. Shepherd.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Next up is Justin Jenkins.
All right, so I understand directly your understandings that I need to abide by the committee's understandings. I don't need to reference that. I want to go back first and foremost to the understanding.
Okay, Mr. Jenkins, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUD's committee?
And we have a limited time, limited capacity. I want to first address the committee's understandings that correlate to community understandings outside of nurses. I'm a nurse. I represent SLU. So I'm going to start with the understanding that you guys have not given us enough information to actually directly relate and correlate our understandings to your other understandings. I'm going to say that I'm not just
okay. Wait a minute. Hold up, Mr. Jenkins. Are you a city resident? Are you speaking as an individual, or are you speaking on behalf of an organization?
We're never one thing.
Excuse me?
We are never one thing. So let me correlate.
What do you mean?
Are you
what do you mean?
You're a lot of things. I'm not going to slow down.
Okay, Mr. Jenkins, let me tell you something right now. If you're not going to conform to the instructions, you're not going to speak.
Okay.
So are you speaking as an individual, or are you speaking on behalf of an organization?
Both.
Okay, so state your name and your address.
My name is J. Justin W. Jenkins. I represent SLU,
At what address?
601 South Grand.
You're speaking on behalf of the university. Go ahead.
All right, so I want to directly relate to the understandings provided in this conversation with very minimal information provided for me to do so. I also want to speak directly to the children of our community. I'm a nurse, right? So 603, 576, 898 Senate bills, right? So we have problems with our structure. It comes back to why we have problems with our adults, okay? These bills allow us to take a little bit of a preference as parents, right? So we can actually consider these ideas. So Senate Bill 603B in particular gave us the ability to remove our children from dangerous situations with our school systems helping with that. It allows us to do virtual education, allows us to demand of our school systems some things. So given that St. Louis City has some of these conversations and some of these understandings that are dangerous, we all have this. So if I can do anything, and I hope people review this, you can utilize this bill to actually enact a little bit of parental guidance. That's what's missing, right? That's why I get people as an adult ICU nurse that are drug addicted. We talked about this. We talked about housing and all these other issues. And I said, let's protect our youth. Let's do that, right? So if we utilize the bills that are already in place, we actually already have a lot of fighting power. We actually have a lot of convenience if we step in as parents and deal with this. So Senate Bill 603, 576, and 898, in general, the understanding is virtual education. We talk about resources. It's already there. It's been enacted since 2018. It's available and free. And unfortunately, it does take away some funds if parents choose to utilize it. How much time do I have?
58 seconds.
All right, so let's get back to the nursing side. So I've been a nurse for a very long time, sort of 20 years, 2 decades, roughly, a little less. So we as nurses are the fundamental understandings. I'm a board certified case manager. So when we correlate what are our challenges, I know I've helped coordinate them. We have these understandings. I've heard a lot of crosstalk. We spend a lot of time talking. As nurse, I do a lot of doing.
25 seconds.
Exactly, no time. 3 minutes does not tell you what I know. It does not give you the representative understanding of what we do. St. Louis University Hospital, first hospital in 80 years to put money into this city. We're doing good work. We'll continue to do good work. Funding would help. It would help so much. And we're good at using our resources. We really
Thank you,
are.
Mr. Jenkins. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you testifying this evening. Next up is Tommy English.
Hello.
Mr. English, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUD's committee this evening?
Yes, I do.
Do you understand the instructions?
I do.
Please proceed. 3 minutes.
Yep. Tommy English here, speaking tonight as a resident of the 6th Ward of 3137 Michigan, as well as on behalf of my organization, the St. Louis Integrated Health Network, located at 1520 Market. So first, statement on behalf of my organization. So since our founding in 2002, the St. Louis Integrated Health Network has worked through collaboration and partnership to strive for quality, accessible, and affordable healthcare services for all of St. Louis residents, with a special emphasis on the medically underserved. And it is in that spirit and with a sense of urgency that we urge the committee to adopt and pass the spending recommendations that the mayor's office has recommended through the work of the Stimulus Advisory Board. With rising COVID-19 cases, the proliferation of the Delta variant, us knowing that less than 40% of our city residents are fully vaccinated, it is crucial that this funding be allocated immediately so that essential public health services can be delivered. Critically, we also know that rising case numbers, as well as the entire pandemic history behind us, has disproportionately impacted our city's Black residents, which is why timely relief is not only an issue of health, but also of justice. We believe and the thorough, informed, and inclusive process that the Stimulus Advisory Board followed to create the recommendations that the mayor's office has presented. And we know them to align with our own experience, our own work, and our own expertise in delivering public health in St. Louis, which is why we're confident in requesting that you adopt them. How much time do I have left?
1 minute, 20 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, as others have stated, at no point during the pandemic, and for many of the items even before the pandemic started, have issues like funding for housing and economic relief not been urgent for the residents that we serve. In addition, the vaccine education and outreach is absolutely critical that be funded as soon as possible. And I would like to specifically speak in support of the funding for community health workers. I do work on a daily basis with that workforce in the St. Louis region. I'm working to support, grow, and evaluate it. And I know that is an extremely important intervention, not only in the short term to provide education and outreach around vaccinations and COVID-19, but also for the ability for that workforce to address other health needs, as was described, as well as their ability to work on all of the social services and other issues that often serve as a barrier to individuals' health. So strong support for that funding and for that workforce. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Mr. English, for your patience and your comments. Next up, we have Kennard Williams.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Williams. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUS committee?
I do.
Okay, you understand the instructions?
Yes.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Hello, committee. My name is Kennard Williams. I'm with Action STL Power Project. We're at 1041 North Anaventer. At the beginning of June, the Stimulus Advisory Committee held and accepted testimony from the public. Over 100 individuals signed up to give input and speak to support the advisory board's recommendations. Feedback was given from many advocates and directly impacted community members. This is following extensive outreach that was done for months using methods of multiple public meetings and direct canvassing. The recommendations made by Mayor Jones and the Stimulus Advisory Board outline the first $80 million allocations, which are currently not a part of Board Bill 2. And it does not have any specific allocations made for those areas in our community-based recommendations. I urge the committee to adopt the recommendations of the advisory board and the mayor, as the need for the resources have been outlined and met with immediate need by communities all across the city. The need for the passage of the $80 million relief package must not be delayed any further. In the wake of the pandemic, many St. Louisans are currently struggling with unemployment and housing insecurity while having been evicted or facing eviction as the end of the federal moratorium closes in. Over the last month, Action St. Louis has taken to task the work of outreaching and door knocking city residents with eviction filings, 1,106 to be exact. Many of these individuals are in wards that are constituents of many of the alders in this committee. In zip code 63112, we outreach 123 households that had evictions filed. In 63118, 242. In 63116, 190. In 63111, we're in the process of outreaching some 247 households. These evictions will continue to ravage Black and Brown communities all across the city as numbers of people experience homelessness in the city will continue to grow unless funding is moved expeditiously in order to support rental assistance, housing, and other direct services needed to support our long neglected community of unhoused residents in the city. This committee and the residents cannot afford to delay these resources from being dispersed any further given the level of crisis we are in. The people of the city have already participated in the most inclusive outreach effort around dispersal of these funds, and to delay it any further is endangering people's lives. It is for this reason that we do not support Board Bill 2 in its current form and urge the committee to adopt the mayor and advisory board's $80 million proposal and pass it on July 1st. Additionally, in this meeting, I've heard that the sky won't fall because people aren't getting evicted because the moratorium has been extended. I should note that the sheriff's office is currently not honoring the federal CDC moratorium, and tenants are still being evicted even though they are presenting it. So when we talk about the sense of urgency for this to get passed, people are still being evicted and they're going to continue to get evicted. even past the point of when the moratorium would have ended next week. And when that comes around, still, they're going to continue to get evicted unless something is done.
Okay, time, Mr. Williams. I appreciate your input tonight and all the work that you do on behalf of St. Louis Power Project. Next up is Sarah Watkins. Miss Sarah Watkins.
Hi.
Sarah Watkins. There she is. Miss Watkins, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUS committee tonight?
I do.
Do you understand the instructions?
Yes.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
My name is Sarah Watkins. I'm a city resident at 2849 Pestalozzi. I'm a renter in the 6th Ward. I'm also a mother, housing advocate, and tenants' right organizer with Homes for All St. Louis. Since April 1st alone, there have been over 500 new evictions filed and thousands more are pending and will be filed. We know that Black and brown tenants and families, and specifically Black women-led households, are more likely to be evicted than any other demographic. Additionally, Black residents are nearly 4 times as likely to be homeless as white residents. Although the CDC moratorium on evictions has been extended through July 31st, the order is being successfully challenged by attorneys in federal courts and the local courts here in the city, leaving renters and bank tenants without the protections they deserve during and after this pandemic. Our existing unhoused community members are already underserved, overlooked, and left to die in the streets. And we know Black and brown communities have been and continue to suffer the most from the exorbitant cost of rent and the lack of clean and safe, dignified housing. The funding allocated by Mayor Jones and the advisory of the SAB, and as well as the constituents of this city, is urgently needed if the city intends to effectively combat the housing crisis in St. Louis that has been intensified by COVID-19. The bulk of the emergency funding the city has received has been slow to disperse and quick to run out through our previous administration. Aware of this, Mayor Jones has committed to making this process as transparent, inclusionary, and expeditious as possible. President Reed had the opportunity to collaborate with the SAB and the mayor, but instead, with blind eyes and deaf ears, he chose to introduce an ill-defined partial bill that is delaying relief. Voting in favor of BB2 as it is a clear refusal to acknowledge and incorporate the priorities and input expressed by nearly 3,000 St. Louisans. Do not allow President Reed's leadership to go against the interests of the people he was elected to represent, as he so often attempts to do. Please consider the efforts of the organizers and advocates who work to capture the feedback that is reflective in the mayor's plan. Board Bill 2 is not reflective of the people's choice as it is, and I'm calling on this committee and the BOA to support the recommendations of the thousands of St. Louisans who took the time to engage with their local government. We have a chance to move this city forward and deliver the resources our communities need to have a true chance at recovery. And the mayor's people.
30 seconds.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Ms. Watkins, really appreciate it. And thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long night. Next up is Rashad Statieh, S-T-A-I-T-I-E-H.
Yeah, I'm here. It's Statieh.
Statieh. Thank you, Mr. Statieh. Do you promise and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUS committee tonight?
I do.
All right. You understand the instructions?
I do.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Rashad Statieh, he, him pronouns. I'm with the Conflict Resolution Center. We're located at 20 South Sarah Street, 63108. Over the past year, I've served as the manager of our our CARES-funded eviction prevention mediation program. Since July 2020, our team has been at every unrepresented landlord-tenant docket with divisions 27 and 28 to mediate eviction matters and connect individuals with rental assistance services. In court and out of court, we have worked with people struggling to navigate the complexities of the legal system, the evolving eviction moratoria, and a system of aid and support that often left people wondering who was there to help them. We have opened over 1,000 case files and have convened for nearly 600 mediations. On June 30th, the CARES funding for our program expires, and this program in its current form terminates. As of now, absent funding to continue, we will be forced to end our involvement with the courts and eventually cease providing eviction prevention services altogether. Our team risks unemployment, and our organization risks a massive loss of institutionalized knowledge that has benefited hundreds of families in the area over the past year alone. This program is too valuable to let fall into lapse, yet we are left without a viable alternative method to subsidize our program between our CARES funding and the potential ARPA funding. The mayor's plan includes a line item pertaining directly to mediation services. We welcome this inclusion in the recognition of mediation's importance in addressing this crisis. And while we have every intention to complete an RFP for ARPA funding when that process opens, there is a great deal of uncertainty as to if, when, and how we can apply. More uncertain is how long it will take RFPs to be approved, checks to arrive, and ultimately programs to resume. Absent alternatives like mediation, as the next moratorium expires, more landlords will seek to evict tenants who have been in arrears and are unable, unwilling, or unsure of how to access the millions of dollars set aside to help them get caught up. These filings will lead to an increased burden on the eviction courts, lengthier dockets, and more confusion and fear for vulnerable residents of our city. Worse, these filings will lead to more judgments and more evictions. This housing crisis is far from over, and we can't afford to end valuable, people-centric services, even temporarily, as it worsens. We want to continue to provide high-quality, professional mediation services that ease burdens on the courts, enable landlords and tenants to communicate, and link individuals in need to a vast continuum of resources. Services like ours are essential to transform the rental assistance process, encourage participation, and ensure accountability. We ask that the board consider the consequences of a lapse in funding from one stream to the next for agencies like ours and the communities we serve. We ask that you take action as soon as possible to prevent a lapse and ensure that those people and families most in need can stay supported. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir, and for your patience. Next up is Amy Waymeyer.
I am here.
Waymeyer. Okay, Ms. Way, did I pronounce that right?
You said it perfect.
Okay, do you promise and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth before the HUD's committee tonight?
I do.
Do you understand the instructions?
I do.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
My name is Amy Waymeyer. I live in the county at 1628 John Cole Drive in Webster Groves, but I work in the city at Paraquad at 5240 Oakland Avenue. That's 17th Ward, and represent Paraquad. So thank you to the President, Board of Aldermen, the HUD's committee, and the public for the opportunity to share my remarks this evening. I've had the privilege to serve on the St. Louis City Stimulus Advisory Board, specifically on the Direct Relief Subcommittee. And I'd like to share just a little information about myself. I was born with muscular dystrophy. I've never walked. I use a personal care assistant for all activities of daily living. In fact, she is waiting patiently for me now to get ready for bed. I was also a recipient of Missouri Medicaid until my early 40s. I've worked in the disability field for over 20 years. In my words, our committee was tasked with making funding recommendations that would essentially impact the greatest number of people most in need as quick as possible. We have put a lot of work into the last 6 weeks to deliver on that commitment of as quickly as possible. And I've learned very much through the process and from the members of the committee, from the data and directly from the community. As Wally detailed, we literally heard from thousands of people through surveys, but we didn't stop there. We used data from multiple sources. And the most impactful data to me was the hours of public testimony that we all listened to on June 3rd. And although I contributed to the full recommendation, my focus was primarily on people with disabilities and seniors. Some of the organizations that I reached out to included the ARC, Easter Seals Midwest, the Star Club Disability Institute, Productive Living Board, St. Louis Office of Developmental Disability Resources, Missouri Connections for Health, the St. Louis Senior Fund, and the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging. 2 areas in need of direct relief rose to the top based on the data and the testimony. One of those areas is direct support care and the home care worker shortage. And Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. The other area that was high on the list was the wait list of home repairs and the impact on seniors living in unsafe and dilapidated homes. And so what I'm asking
30
is,
seconds.
I hope our work and the public input will be recognized, and the mayor's direct relief plan will inform the board bill too, and help lighten the load so that we can move quickly to benefit our community as soon as possible. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to serve.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all your service to the process. Next up is Miss Jessica Myers.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, Ms. Myers, do you promise and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUD's committee tonight?
I do.
Do you understand the instructions?
I do.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman Boyd, and thank you to the members of the HUD's committee. My name is Jessica Myers, and I'm Project Director for the St. Louis Area Violence Prevention Commission, or VPC. Our address is 333 South 18th Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63103. I'm here this evening to provide informational testimony. As you know, and as we've heard tonight, St. Louis stands on the cusp of a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make investments in projects and programs that will address needs that have existed for decades. One of those is the rising rates of gun violence. St. Louis is not alone in seeing an increase in gun violence during the COVID pandemic. This has happened in cities across the country in 2020 and 2021. St. Louis is also not alone in reckoning with the fact that investing in traditional arrest and incarcerate models will not prevent violence. As you've probably heard, even from law enforcement leaders, we know we can't arrest our way out of our violence problem. Instead, we must address violence as a public health issue, investing in evidence-based solutions to the root causes of violence. In that way, St. Louis is ahead of many other cities because a coalition of dozens of agencies have come together through VPC to work toward a safer St. Louis using the public health approach. In 2017, the DOJ performed a diagnostic analysis of the city police department. And their recommendations included community-based and social service providers, tearing down silos, creating comprehensive partnerships, and focusing on evidence-based practices, and bringing critical services directly to individuals and families. Adopting trauma-informed approaches to address the needs of individuals who have experienced trauma, particularly young people who are exposed to recurring violence. This type of exposure is linked with negative outcomes later in life. And building partnerships among local government agencies, law enforcement, public health, and social services to share information, coordinate, focus on high-risk people and places, and implement more creative and innovative solutions. It is vital that the funds from the American Rescue Plan Act be used for the public health approach and not simply allocated to traditional arrest and incarcerate models. At VPC, our own community engagement with more than 1,500 residents and our research on best practices has highlighted the need for community violence prevention programs that address the mental health needs of those experiencing trauma after violent events, even community residents that weren't the direct victims, housing assistance, youth jobs, youth-led programs, and vacancy abatement in high violence neighborhoods. All these should be addressed as part of a comprehensive violence prevention strategy, which ARPA funds allow us to begin to implement now. Community residents also expressed a desire for transparency in decisions about violence prevention and policing efforts in their neighborhood. Therefore, it's also vital that the use of the ARPA funds to address community violence and service provision be as transparent and specific and measurable as possible so residents can hold government accountable for their use and we hope ultimately for their success. The St. Louis Area Violence Prevention Commission is ready
Ms. Myers, go ahead, 10 seconds.
We're ready to support the city in the implementation of its ARPA funded programs using existing infrastructure to make the dollars go further for our community residents' safety.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and commitment and your patience tonight with us.
Absolutely.
Next up is Elaine Laura. Is Miss Elaine Laura with us? Going twice. Elaine Laura, we're gone. Next up is Bishop Derek Robinson.
Oh,
Miss Bishop.
I'm here. I'm sorry, I got bumble fingers. I was so excited to hear my name. Please.
You won the prize. Okay.
Okay.
We're coming back to you. We'll give you your consideration. So, Miss Laura, do you promise to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth for the HUD's committee tonight?
Yes.
Do you understand the rules?
Yes.
Okay, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Elaine Laura, and I live in the 18th Ward at 4436 Enright, and I'm just representing myself tonight. And I really appreciate all of you that have stayed with this program, and I'm going to make it short but sweet. I've written it out, and I've got to just find it. Well, it's hard for me to say, to assess if these programs create employment opportunities. And I would like to be able to point out in 5 years to my granddaughter how this relief money was utilized to make a long-term difference in our community. And that's why I think this is the prime time to rectify a huge disservice that affects St. Louis City dwellers. Unmetered water is billed at a much higher level by MSD than metered water. And as we all know, 90% of the city of St. Louis is unmetered water. So I think as MSD costs continues to mount, there will be a direct impact on renters. Rent will definitely increase to cover, I'm a small landlord, to cover the increased MSD bills. So I think we should create job opportunities, less installed water meters in our community. Let's hire people to dig ditches to install these water meters so that our sewer bills are more in line with county dwellers. Now, a friend of mine gave me her bill, and she has a huge home in Belknap. Her bill is $36 a month. My bill in my little small townhouse on Enright is $70 a month. And it's because I'm unmetered water. People need jobs. Let's create jobs with these opportunities. That
30 seconds.
Create some jobs and rectify MSD billing city dwellers twice the amount of county dwellers. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work. I appreciate you, but I want jobs in our community.
Thank you, Miss Laura. I'm glad you had a chance to get in. Okay, you guys bear with me a little bit. We only have about 4 people left. It is after 9 o'clock, but you know, for the consideration of people been holding on, I think we can hold on just a little bit longer. Is the infamous Bishop Derek Robinson with us tonight? Bishop Robinson, going twice. Bishop Robinson, we're out. Okay, next up is people. No, I'm gonna go back real quick. I got in the chat. Miss Dean, Jean Dean was having technical difficulties. Miss Dean, are you here? Miss Dean, I saw you.
He's definitely here. He's coming on. Yeah, she's coming on. Come on, Jen. There you go.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for your patience. I am a 7th Ward resident.
Okay, hold up, Miss Dean. Do
Sorry, you just swear me in.
To tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God before the HUD's committee?
I do.
Okay, you understand the instructions?
Yes.
You have 3 minutes, go.
Okay. My name is Jen Dean. I am a 7th Ward resident. I live on the 2200 block of McNair Avenue in McKinley Heights. And I'm a representative of the National Nurses United, National Nurses Organizing Committee. We represent nurses at St. Louis University Hospital here in the city of St. Louis. The pandemic has shown us that the city cannot be healthy if only some among us have access to quality health care, and if we don't invest in preventative and protective measures to keep the community healthy. So it's unimaginable to me that we would be considering a stimulus relief bill directly related to the pandemic that does not include increased funding for public health and direct healthcare resources. our city suffered not only from the natural epidemiological phenomenon that led to the pandemic, but also by a profound failure of a robust public health system focused on, like I said, prevention, and that had largely handed over the reins to reactive, profit-driven healthcare systems to provide for community problems. So I was glad to hear that we have great stores of PPE now, but we did not have those at the time when frontline healthcare workers needed the most. And having additional funding for the Department of Public Health would allow them to be able to directly serve frontline healthcare workers in a way that they were not in the worst weeks of the pandemic. We also have a great need for behavioral health resources in our city. We see this every day in the hospital. Patients that come in largely because of behavioral health needs that don't have access to that care in an ongoing or outpatient way. And that puts a strain on our healthcare system, just like the strain we saw of increased admission during the pandemic. So again, we are in support of the mayor's proposal, and we urge you to revise BB2 to be in line with the healthcare recommendations made in that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your participation. Again, your patience with us. Next, we have by phone, AJ Robinson. Is AJ Robinson with us? I don't see any phone people connected. AJ Robinson, twice. AJ Robinson, 3 times. We're going to move on. Next is the infamous Miss Ann Crenshaw. Is Miss Ann Crenshaw by phone with us tonight? Miss Ann Crenshaw. Is Miss Ann Crenshaw with us? Okay. That takes care of everyone tonight, unless the clerk tells me I missed somebody. I think I went through.
Chairman Boyd.
Yes.
I do have on page, I think it's 2.
Page 2.
I think it's 2, Miss Latanya, number 8, after Mr. Robinson, after Bishop Derek Robinson. Do you see that?
Okay, it didn't print. So why don't you go ahead and call that? I don't have that person. I thought I saw it on the screen, but it didn't print out. So I thought I was deceiving myself. So
I'm on the
Ms.
video.
Garrett, okay, hold on. So you said Miss Garrett was number 8. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
sir.
So Miss Garrett.
Yeah, it's Garnett, but it's Sawyer, Latanya Garnett Sawyer.
Sawyer?
Uh-huh. My email say Garnett.
Okay.
But my name is Tanya Sawyer.
Okay, so Miss Sawyer, do you promise and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before the HUS committee tonight?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and state your name again for the record and where you live.
My name is Latanya Sawyer. I reside at 2608 Slattery Street. I work at the MSL Stadium. I'm a construction worker, and I'm a business owner, LMG All Season Yard Service in Clean Holland, which is located in the city of St. Louis. I live in the Jeff Van Loo neighborhood, and I was at the meeting when the mayor, when she had opened up for the suggestions, but I didn't get a chance to speak. And I was wanted to suggest the fact that this area over here, I mean, no one's taking care of the grass. No ideas for over here. It's like 5 people that live on my street. I live like, my street is behind that Columbia school. And I take pictures around the school. The grass is not cut. It's like 6 feet tall. I done been up to the mayor's office. I done took pictures and sent it to the mayor. And I'm just wondering, what plans do they have for this neighborhood? Like, what are they gonna do? Like, are they gonna build in between these houses? Because like I have a neighbor, or all the neighbors that's on the street been here for 50 or 60 years. They grew up here and they still here. And then when they sold out to that Paul McKee for that Northside regeneration, which he was the same person in Kinlock, the neighborhood in 2009 went down. And so now they're wondering why it's crime. It's crime because it's nothing here. It's nothing. Like a bunch of trees, like in my yard right now, his trees and the garbage and the trash that's on his property is falling in my property. on every homeowner on this block, on this street that I live. Paul McKee property is next to it and it's decayed, or it's grass, or it's trees on top of the house, and no one is doing anything. And like I said, I'm a journeyman. I'm a construction worker, so I work at the Major League Soccer Dome, so I'm paying city taxes. I live in the city, resident. I live in the Just Van Loo neighborhood, and I pay taxes there. I pay taxes through and I don't see what they doing. They're not even cutting the grass or nothing. Nothing is getting done over here. So what I think they should do with their stimulus money is that they should rebuild the neighborhood, the community. If they do that, then they would generate taxes, because people would be paying taxes because it'll be houses here. If they will remove those 2 hotels that's on Grand, that is not serving no one but criminals, drug addicts, and anybody else that don't even live over here in this neighborhood. They got this hotel, these 2 hotels sitting up here. It's nothing but drug addicts, nothing but criminals, nothing but everything that is not supposed to be there. And the police ride past that and ain't nobody saying nothing. I sit up on Grand. I go around taking pictures.
15 seconds.
I took pictures at Columbia School, and it was 3 little girls sitting on the bench. And the grass, they were sitting on that bench where they did that garden, and them little girls were sitting there in the school, and the grass is 5 feet tall all around them. And I'm wondering, why ain't nobody doing nothing about it? Why ain't nobody saying nothing about it?
Okay, Ms. Sawyer, your time is up. We want to thank you for your comments tonight. Thank you for hanging in there. I apologize, I skipped you, but we got you in. So again, thank you for your time tonight.
All right, thank you.
That concludes for today, public input, but certainly interested in having public input again as much as possible on, I think that's June 28th, but that's going to be tight because we have certain board bills that were already scheduled to be heard on that day. And so we'll see what time we have left as far as taking more comment on board bill number 2. Again, I want to provide a little clarity on what we're talking about as far as board bill number 2. The board bill number 2, again, it was kind of an open placeholder in anticipation of some recommendations from the Board of Aldermen and the Mayor's administration. So now we're at a point where we're looking at the recommendations from the Mayor's office. We're hearing more recommendations from the community and the committee and other colleagues so that we can put together a even better direct relief bill. I would be remiss if I didn't allow committee members not committee members, but all the people that I see on here, if they had a question about the mayor's presentation. I'm just going to go by who I see first. I see Alderwoman Megan Green. If she had any questions about the mayor's presentation from the mayor's office, Alderwoman Green. Let's see. Let's see anybody else. Don't see any other alderperson. Okay, so I'll go around one more time with the committee members. Before I forget, one of the things that came up I thought was very interesting was about St. Louis Public Schools. And I was wondering if the mayor's administration would be interested in using any of these funds for demolition of some of St. Louis Public Schools. I certainly have an eyesore Hempstead School in the 5900 block of Minerva and been trying to work with the public school system for many years to try to get it down, but told they don't have enough money. It's a huge building. They told me it take about $3 million to demolish, which they just didn't have. But in the spirit of partnering with St. Louis Public Schools, I'm wondering if you guys would be interested. I would only be interested if they sold it to us for $1, but not to tear it down and they get to keep the land. What do you guys think?
It's an interesting idea. I think the first thing we have to recognize is that St. Louis Public Schools has already gotten over $100 million in stimulus funds. So whatever assessment is reached about the highest and best use of these funds, it should be analyzed in terms of all the funds at our collective disposal. And then it's also worth noting that we have a lot of buildings that need to be demolished. And I would put this in the infrastructure bucket, where we need a deeper, inclusive, community-led process to identify the city's capital and infrastructure priorities.
Or changing.
I would also add that with respect to old school buildings or other types of infrastructure, it's important to keep in mind that we need to plan and do some intensive planning to really assess our community's needs with an eye towards equity, but also with an eye towards coordination and understanding of the additional resources that are going to come from Washington, D.C., so that when we have a full picture, we're able to deploy those resources in a coordinated, equitable manner.
That's a good point, and I really appreciate that, because I've been torn myself about $500 million and hearing about the potential infrastructure money come down. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, spending a lot of it with infrastructure, and then all of a sudden we get $100 million for infrastructure, even though I think we probably have $1 billion worth of infrastructure improvement needs in the city of St. Louis. Wow, this has been good. I've enjoyed this public discourse tonight. I know it's getting late. It's 9:20, but I do want to make a quick wraparound of committee members. And then I'm going to end it with the mayor's administration kind of wrapping it up, unless the president wants to wrap it up. Is the president still with us? Okay. Mr. President, you want to wrap it up, or you want to?
I'll wrap it.
Okay, cool. So what I'll do is I'll go around real quick with the committee members. I'll go back to the mayor's administration, do their wrap up, and then I'll allow the president to do his wrap up. Okay, so here we go in the bonus round. Alderman Marlene Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only want to say that it is unfortunate that the public has been confused on the process, confused on the fact that there had never been a board bill presented to the Board of Aldermen, but some recommendations have been presented. I am also concerned about the opportunity to make sure that people are taken care of with their rent eviction issues and utility bills. It is currently in the power of the executive branch to amend all contracts that provide those services to us, keep those contracts moving forward with the appropriate dollars that are already sitting there available, so that we can make sure that people are taken care of. Let's not play games. That should have been done a week or two ago. And it still can be done, because it only takes about 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most to make it happen. So let's take care of the people and stop trying to take care of one upping each other. Because everybody has everybody has disturbed me tonight. And what I want to say to you is, I am so concerned about our inability to move forward together. And I must see it soon. And I've already shared with the president of the Board of Aldermen where my thought process is at this moment. So I thank everybody who's hung in there. It was rude of us to have you sit there that long, but you were heard. I hope you continue to stay involved, follow what is going on. But again, I am very upset tonight. And I needed to say that because I wouldn't have been able to sleep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Alderman Cone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just a couple comments. I'm encouraged by some of the feedback that many of the speakers shared with us today. It seemed as though we had about roughly 30 people give their opinions, and certainly most seem to be in favor of moving forward with the mayor's recommendations. But there were a couple interesting ideas that I think would be good for us to pursue, but I think that they to me, I think most of them seemed related to infrastructure, and we do have the possibility to invest more in infrastructure later down the road in different tranches of funding. So, I think, right now we've got a lot of need in our communities that it's critical for us to address at this point in time. But I love the idea of looking at, upgrading our water system. I love the idea of looking at how we can partner with SLPS, even if it's just on buildings. I like the idea of putting more money into the home repair program. I think that, all of those things and more are really great ideas, but I do think most of them are related to infrastructure needs that we have as a city and can be evaluated at a later point in time. So, I know that we're moving as quickly as possible and trying to get as much public input into this process, but those are just a few of the key notes or takeaways that I have from tonight's meeting as well. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments and participation. Alderwoman Pamela Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I wanted to say to everybody, the mayor's office, the Board of Aldermen, it's not about us. It's about the residents out here that need help. And we need to make sure that whatever we're doing, that's our number one focus. And so I just have issues when people keep saying it's not my fault, it's not your fault, it's everybody's fault, because we still have people that are getting evicted, that don't have the funds to stay in their homes. We still have people that's out here on the street that's homeless. We still have people that can't pay their bills and survive. So we need to look at what we're doing as elected officials to ensure that our focus is the residents who we are supposed to serve. We look at what we're doing. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you. Alderman John Collins Muhammad. Alderman John Collins Muhammad. I saw him. Okay, we're gonna move right along. Alderman Ryan had to check out. Alderwoman Evans.
Yes, I just want to commend the speakers for hanging in and voicing their concerns. I just hope that we go ahead and get the resources to the constituents on time and not delay them getting the resources. That's all I have to say, because we have gone through a lot of stress this past year, and we need to go ahead and do what we need to do to help our constituents.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna turn it back right now to the mayor's administration for their final comments of tonight.
I'll keep it brief, but we really want to thank the public for taking time out of their busy schedule and engaging in this very important process. Thank you to the members of the committee. And Alderwoman Boyd, who has a wonderful last name as well, her sentiments really struck a chord with me in the sense that when it is all said and done, I don't think the majority of the people will be concerned about who gets credit or who took fault with whom's process. While we certainly respect it, I think people will wonder what their elected officials did and how they responded to a crisis. And we stand ready to work with our colleagues at the Board of Aldermen and with Board of Estimate and Apportionment to respond to the urgency of the moment with respect to COVID, evictions, and public safety. So we will continue to extend olive branches to anyone who wants to help us respond to this crisis and look forward to getting St. Louisans the relief that they so desperately need. So thank you again to the public. Thank you everyone for your time this evening.
And thank you for your presentation. And I want to say, through this public discourse tonight, I'm excited about, everything that I've heard. One piece of good news is I haven't heard anybody on the HUD's committee say they are opposed to the recommendations that have been put forth by the administration. As a matter of fact, I've heard encouraging words about how we can add a little bit to it. And so I want everybody to be hopeful that, this is going to be a good and a strong process. I mean, maybe it doesn't end on the deadline that some people wanted to end on, but I am hopeful that it's going to end on a good note. I again want to thank the Stimulus Advisory Committee, the citizens, for all the tireless work and efforts they put into, massaging all the data and all the volunteers and just everybody who played a role to even get to the point of making this presentation today. I certainly wanted not to go unnoticed that it is greatly appreciated. It's all about a process. Everybody that knows me know I'm very process oriented. I tell people all the time, I'm not perfect, but I do believe in a process. I do believe in fairness. Even though sometimes I come across maybe mean-spirited, I don't mean to be. I'm firm about certain things. But I'm just excited. I'm excited about the work that Mr. Stewart has done. I got that right, I think. He seemed to be very data-driven. He seemed to be very committed. He put a lot of energy into this process. I want you to know that your voice has been heard. Your work is being recognized. Everybody on that team work is being recognized. And I don't want us to move in a way that it's contentious and that, again, it was well said that it's not about who takes the credit. It's really about the deliverable of services at the end of the day. And we as a team, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch, we need to work in the spirit of cooperation in the best interest of everybody. And I think this process has presented itself with some teachable moments. One of the things I hope we can realize out of this is that you just can't push people around. And I'm not saying that that is something that was intentional, but what we must stop doing is trying to publicly denigrate people and bully people into doing something on somebody else's timetable. That's not effective. That's not smart. And I don't think the community likes that. I've been told many a times, just stop fighting. Can you just figure out how to work with the mayor? I'm being forth. People have told me that. And I'd say it's not that I don't want to work with the mayor, but I have an opinion. And again, I want the mayor to be successful, but I want to be in a way that is collaboratively, that all voices are heard. We need to listen to the mayor's administration and the mayor's office. They need to listen to the legislative branch. It's a new administration. There's a lot to be learned in that administration about how city government truly works. There is no one that can jump into room 200 and think they know everything. And sometimes it's important to listen to senior members within city government, whether it's Paul Payne as the budget director, the comptroller, the building commissioner, whoever that's been around a long time, because they have rich history. They can tell you where you're going to fail if you move in a certain way. And so I'm really hopeful. I feel good about this experience tonight. I want to be a willing partner. I want to be able to participate well in the process, but I'm going to always be me. So with that, we'll wrap it up with the president. And Mr. President, you have the gavel to end the meeting once you're finished.
Oh, man, I don't know. Look, I'm not going to take that privilege. I'll have to turn it back over to you because, Chairman, for folks who are listening, you do a lot of things in city government. One of the things that you don't do, you never, ever, ever, ever step on the chairman of HUD's toes at all. So, you know what? I just want to thank each and every one of you for all the time that you spent. I want to thank the SAB for all of the time you spent in working through all of the community engagement that you did and all of the data gathering and everything. I appreciate it. It's going to really help us streamline this process. I'm also going to say it is absolutely essential if we want to get things done and if we truly want to work together. One of the things that you do not do is go out and just create chaos online and, like some of the mayor's administration that have been out attacking me online and stuff. That does not help. It actually hurts, and it does not help to motivate and continue the process and get things done. We're talking about $80 million. And if I remember right, the last package that we did under the Cruisen administration was over twice that amount from a whole bunch of different entities. So it took a lot to put that together. We put the whole thing together, got it done, and did all that within it was faster than 45 days. I think that, when you look at the fact that the Board of Aldermen, we've given the administration 45 days to come up with the plan, right? I think that was very generous of us to do it. You didn't see us on the sideline saying, where are you? Give us a plan today, give us a plan tomorrow. No, we gave you time, 45 days. We've had it in our hands, and officially tonight was the first time we've had a full presentation on it. If we truly want to work together, we're going to have to understand and respect each other's roles. If we've given you 45 days, give us 10. If we wanted it done faster, it would have been easier if you would have cut yours down by 20 days, but we can't go back and redo that. But moving forward is so imperative that we resist the temptation to go out and go on attack. These things are easily and simple to get through. Again, first round of funding was twice this. You didn't hear any of this stuff out in the community. You didn't see any attacks on social media. You didn't see none of that. None of that happened. And the whole thing was probably done in the whole thing all together from the time it started to time it ended was probably 3 to 4 weeks. But we were gracious and gave you 45 days. The board bill number 2 is a placeholder bill. Anybody remotely close to this understands that. It's what I told the mayor before she was elected. I said, I'm going to introduce a placeholder bill. Before she was sworn in, so I'm going to introduce a placeholder bill, and that placeholder bill will be the bill that once you get all of your priorities together, that'll be the placeholder bill we put everything into. And now we find ourselves here and we find a push over last night and the day before telling people to compare the placeholder bill to the work that the committee has done. And then we see people out online and the mayor's office promoting and sending text messages out saying how we're holding things up at the Board of Aldermen when you took 45 days and we've had it for less than a week. That's not the way you get things done collaboratively. That's not who we are. That's not who St. Louis is. We can do better than that. So I'm asking you all to recommit yourself to do better than that the next time. I'm asking you to wake up tomorrow morning and do better than that. This is only $80 million. We just did twice that amount. Nobody fighting in the press. Nobody attacking each other on social media. Nobody putting up smoke ghosts and saying, oh, the world is going to end, when they know that they could easily fix that with a 2-paragraph letter. Actually 2 sentences. Transfer from this account to this account and encumber it for next year. That's all that the administration had to do. But instead of doing that, they whipped everybody up into a frenzy. So I'm asking you, don't do that. We are here to partner with you. We've shown you that because we gave you 45 days and you didn't hear one peep out of us. Not one peep out of none of the members of the Board of Aldermen. You don't think we understood that you were taking an exorbitant amount of time? We understood that. But we gave you that time without saying anything. And then when you made your announcement after taking 45 days, you turned and said, the Board of Aldermen is holding us up. That's not the way you build partnerships, and that's not the way you move forward. So I'm asking you to please understand that. Don't put us in an adversarial role if you don't have to be. But thank you, because it is so essential that we get these things done for the citizens of the city of St. Louis. The Board of Aldermen has shown it can do it. We've done it with twice that amount in half the time already before. So we stand here and appreciate the opportunity to partner with you, but it starts with truth. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you tonight. And thanks again to everyone that has worked so hard to get all the information together that we were able to review tonight.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we're going to end with me giving a big thanks and gratitude to our esteemed Assistant Clerk, Sharita Rogers, who have hung in here with us tonight. Our Board of Aldermen staff do not always have to do this. We don't do night meetings that often, but when they do, they're real troopers. They have our back. We can't do what we need to do without people like Sharita and the other Board of Aldermen staff, and certainly STL TV, because they had a lot to do, my understanding tonight. They had other projects, but when this meeting, because it was important to me to have a night meeting, if not two, they were willing to accommodate us without a lot of excuses. So I want to salute and appreciate them for all their hard work, because we are a team and we're doing this on behalf of the citizens of St. Louis. And with that, again, thank you everybody else who hung in with us. And now I am going to officially consider the HUD's meeting adjourned.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.